Chapter 1722. The men in black glanced at Yu Qigong coldly, then turned their heads to the side and remained silent. Looks like you're all stubborn. Yu Qigong sneered. I love stubborn people. Since you don't want to talk, then die. Then, Yu Qigong looked at the soldier beside him and gave him a look. The soldier understood and dragged the men to the side of the corpses. He took out the long sword at his waist and finished them off with one slash. Seeing this, Yu Qigong took out a cigarette from his waist and flicked it over the oil lamp on the table. He put it in his mouth and took a deep puff. He exhaled the smoke and muttered to himself, "This is the 5th batch tonight. Chang'an is going to be chaotic." Then, Yu Qigong glanced at the men in black squatting in the corner and frowned. These people were just caught, but they were from Zhenla, Tubo, and Tuyuhun. The Tang dynasty was on good terms with these countries, so he couldn't just kill them. But after interrogating them for a long time, there was no result. Should he kill them or let them go? Yu Qigong was stumped. He glanced at the men in black, then looked at the soldier beside him and said, "Lock them up. Don't let any of them escape." Then, he turned and walked out of the house. The next day, early morning. As the morning bell rang, the morning court officially began. At this time, the hall was filled with officials holding white jade tablets. They all looked solemn and serious. Li Shimin sat on the dragon throne and looked down at everyone. "Greetings, Your Majesty." The officials bowed. "Everyone please rise." Li Shimin waved his hand and gestured for everyone to rise. After getting up, Yu Qigong stepped forward and bowed. "Your Majesty, last night, a large number of Tubo, Tuyuhun, Indian, Turkic, and even Goguryeo spies appeared in Chang'an. They seemed to be after that cotton coat." What? Li Shimin's eyes flashed with disbelief. He knew that once the cotton coat was revealed, the foreign ambassadors in Tang would definitely take action. But he didn't expect to catch so many in one night. From this, it could be seen how tempting this thing was to them. These places, especially Goguryeo, the Turks, Tubo, and Tuyuhun, did not have a good winter. Almost every year, it was up to the heavens to see if they could survive. But now it was different. Feng Zi had created such a thing. Once this thing flowed into these places, what would the consequences be? Li Shimin knew this better than anyone else. It was almost as if the cold no longer affected or weakened them. This was not a good thing for the Tang dynasty. However, the most troublesome thing right now was Tubo and Tuyuhun. Although there were plans to target them, these plans were still in progress. Furthermore, whether or not he should give it to her was a difficult question. Li Shimin knew that the reason these envoys did not come to court today was probably because they were considering the matter of the missing people last night. Once they recovered, then tomorrow's morning court session, Li Shimin's expression could not help but change. But he still flicked his sleeves and said calmly, "Minister Yuqi, what do you think about this?" At this moment, the officials in the court were in an uproar. Previously, they had thought that this was rather baffling. After all, the Tang envoys were always very low-key in Chang'an. How could such a thing happen? But what did His Majesty mean? The Emperor meant, could it be that all of this was real? For a moment, the court was in an uproar. What? The Turk spies? Why did these spies come to the Tang dynasty? Could it be that these guys have some bad intentions? On the dragon throne, Li Shimin frowned and glanced at the crowd. Seeing this, Little Gizi hurriedly shouted in a sharp voice, "Stop arguing." Hearing Little Gizi's words, everyone quickly stopped talking and stood respectfully in place. Seeing this, Li Shimin shifted his gaze to Yu Qigong and said slowly, "Yu Qigong, tell me in detail what happened last night." "Yes, Your Majesty." Yu Qigong regained his composure and said, "Last night, when I was patrolling Chang'an, I discovered quite a number of men in black. Later, I sent guards to apprehend them, but they were discovered to be Turkic spies. After interrogating them, they refused to say anything and were killed by me. However, later on I discovered quite a number of spies from Zhenla, India, Tubo, and Tuyuhun. Among them, there were even some Wuxia spies who wanted to break into Zhang Mansion at night. I didn't dare to make a decision." Hearing this, Li Shimin frowned. The Turks and Indians were easy to understand. They were just spies for some information. Just kill them. But why would these Wuxia pirates break into the Zhang residence at night? Could it be related to the recent cotton clothes? I need to interrogate them more. And Zhenla, Tubo, and Tuyuhun? The Tang dynasty has always been on good terms with them. What are they thinking now that they sent spies? If I kill these people, it will inevitably cause conflict between the two countries and may cause some unnecessary trouble. But if I don't kill them, I can't show the imperial power of the Tang dynasty. This is a bit difficult. Chapter 1723. He glanced at the crowd and said slowly, "Dear ministers, what do you think we should do with these spies?" As soon as he finished speaking, everyone frowned. They looked at each other and pretended to be mute. Wei Zheng, who was standing at the front, turned his head and glanced at the crowd with disdain in his heart. He thought to himself, "You guys are usually the ones who quarrel the most. Why aren't you talking now? Why are you all pretending to be mute?" After a cold snort, Wei Zheng took a step forward with the white jade tablet in his hand. "Your Majesty, I suggest that we release all these spies." Li Shimin looked at Wei Zheng in surprise. "Dear Minister, why do you suggest that we release these spies?" "Yes, why do you want to release these spies, Lord Wei? Don't you know what kind of harm it will cause to the Tang dynasty if we release these spies?" Everyone looked at Wei Zheng with a puzzled expression. "Let's not talk about what kind of loss it will cause to the Tang dynasty. Even if we kill them, there will be spies who will continue to sneak into the Tang dynasty. There are thousands of spies. Can you kill them all? If we release these spies, it will be different." Wei Zheng smiled faintly and said slowly. A grand scribe walked out and asked curiously, "What's the difference?" Wei Zheng glanced at the grand scribe and said, "If we release these spies, we can numb these countries and make them relax their vigilance. It will be more convenient for the Tang dynasty to do things." "How can we do that? If we release these spies, they will think that the Tang dynasty is afraid of them." The grand scribe waved his sleeve and was very dissatisfied. Then he looked at Li Shimin and said, "Your Majesty, please give the order. I am willing to lead the army to immediately attack Tubo, Zhenla, and other countries. I only need 200,000 soldiers." As soon as he finished speaking, a row of generals stood up as if they had been injected with chicken blood. "Your Majesty, I only need 150,000 soldiers to immediately attack Tuyuhun and show the imperial power of the Tang dynasty. Your Majesty, I only need 100,000 soldiers to attack the Wuxia pirates." Everyone presented their memorials one after another, expressing their determination to establish their careers. "Nonsense." Zhang Sun Wuji immediately stood up and scolded, "The Battle of Chiotzi is getting more and more intense. How can we attack other countries? Moreover, Lord Wei is right. Releasing these spies is undoubtedly the best choice for the Tang dynasty." Zhang Sun Wuji ignored the grand scribe and turned to Li Shimin. He cupped his hands and said, "Your Majesty, this subject suggests that we release these spies." As soon as he finished speaking, the other civil officials exchanged glances with one another before stepping forward one after another. "Your subjects agree." "This subject agrees." Seeing this, Li Shimin narrowed his eyes. He didn't say anything, but his mind was racing. According to Wei Zheng, releasing the spies and continuing to maintain a good relationship with Zhenla, Tubo, and Tuyuhun would also numb the enemy and make them think that the Tang dynasty was afraid of them. At most, they would lose some face. In this way, it would be more beneficial for the future development of the Tang dynasty. However, if they started a war with these countries, the Battle of Chiotzi would definitely be affected. Once they became angry and joined forces with the Turks, India, and other countries, the Tang dynasty would definitely not be able to stop them. At that time, it wouldn't be a matter of a few spies, but a matter of several countries. Forget it, it's better to release these spies. After making up his mind, Li Shimin glanced at the crowd and said in a deep voice, "I have decided to release the spies." As soon as he finished speaking, the faces of the generals changed. They hurriedly cupped their hands and said, "Your Majesty, you can't. If you let these people go, what will happen to the imperial prestige of the Tang dynasty?" "Yes, Your Majesty, you can't let these people go." Li Shimin narrowed his eyes and waved his sleeves. "I have already decided on this matter. There is no need to discuss it further. Yu Qigong, Release these spies immediately after the court is dismissed. After that, Li Shimin walked out of the side hall without looking back. Imperial Study. Li Shimin sat on the dragon throne with a lit cigarette in his hand. He took a deep puff and exhaled smoke, looking like he was enjoying it. After a while, a few heads popped out of the door. Li Shimin took a closer look and found that it was Yu Qigong and the others who were in the court just now. Come in. Li Shimin took the cigarette and said lightly. Hearing this, Yu Qigong, Xing Yaojin, Wei Jing, Zhang Sun Wuji, and the others walked into the Imperial Study together. Your Majesty. Everyone bowed. Li Shimin exhaled a mouthful of smoke and said slowly, no need to be so courteous in the study. Let's talk about what happened in the court just now. Although he agreed to release the spies just now, he still felt a little uncomfortable in his heart. After all, these guys all had ulterior motives. He still needed to be on guard. Wei Jing stepped forward and said, Your Majesty, releasing the spies is not a big deal. This is also a step to ease the Tang dynasty's Jiuzi war. But I'm afraid, Wei Jing frowned at this point. Old Wei, what are you afraid of? Hurry up and say it. You're stuck at the crucial moment. Cheng Yaojin said unhappily. Wei Jing glanced at Cheng Yaojin. Seeing that Li Shimin was also a little impatient, he said, Your Majesty, do you remember when the Tang dynasty borrowed food from Tubo and Tuyuhun? Hearing this, Li Shimin was stunned. He clearly remembered that when Tubo and the Tutangu locust calamity had caused a huge uproar, that brat Zhang Feng had schemed against them. That was how the matter of borrowing food came about. One had to know that Tubo and Tuyuhun were poor and remote places. Their families did not have enough food to eat. Chapter 1724. Thus, they half sold and half gave the pigs to the Great Tang. At that time, in the eyes of the Tubo and Tuyuhun, these were filthy animals. They couldn't even fill their stomachs, so how could they feed the pigs? Of course, the people of Chang'an city also thought the same. They all thought that Zhang Feng and himself were crazy to want such things. However, they didn't expect that Zhang Feng's behavior would shock everyone. He used inferior pork to make braised meat and began to sell it in Chang'an city. At first, people couldn't accept this thing. Later, people gradually tried it until they were fascinated. Thinking of this, Li Shimin felt a burst of satisfaction. After all, this matter made him proud. He smiled and said, Of course, I remember. What's wrong? My dear minister. Wei Jing sighed secretly and said, Your Majesty, have you ever thought about what if Tubo and Tuyuhun ask us for food this time? Hearing this, Li Shimin frowned. He really didn't think about this problem because Tubo and Tuyuhun didn't mention this matter at all. It was as if this incident had never happened. Everyone had forgotten about it. Now that Wei Jing mentioned it, he slowly recalled. Have you thought of a way? Li Shimin asked. As soon as his voice fell, Cheng Yaojin jumped out. What way? We've already borrowed it. Your Majesty, let's be straightforward and not return it. Yes, those two guys won't dare to come to the Tang dynasty. To the side, Yu Qi respectfully agreed. Wei Jing denied, No, this matter must be dealt with. Otherwise, it will affect the relationship between the Tang dynasty and the two countries. Li Shimin frowned. If it were other countries, they wouldn't return it. However, Tubo and Tuyuhun had always been friendly with the Tang dynasty. Moreover, the people of the two countries were still in a state of food shortage. The people did not have enough to eat, and there were internal riots. The Tang dynasty had just sent 100,000 soldiers to help them stabilize the situation. If things turned sour at this time, what would happen to the soldiers of the Tang dynasty? What if the other side flew into a rage out of humiliation and joined the Battle of Jiuzi? Then what do you think we should do? Li Shimin took a puff of his cigarette and said slowly. Wei Jing said with an embarrassed expression, Your Majesty, the Tang dynasty doesn't have much food in reserve. It's not enough to repay the debt. In fact, he didn't have a solution in mind. He just brought it up for everyone to discuss. Damn, since you don't have anything to return, why did you keep talking? If you want me to say it, what's there to return? I borrowed it with my own ability, why should I return it? Cheng Yaojin said in a sarcastic tone. That's right. Those two old fellows can't even take care of themselves right now. How would they have the time to ask for food from us? I think you guys are worrying too much. Yuqigong also laughed it off. In fact, Li Shimin had thought of not returning the debt. However, because of the Battle of Chiotzi, he couldn't do that. After all, he was the emperor and had to think of the entire Tang dynasty. At this time, Zhang Sun Wuji, who had been silent all this time, stood up and smiled faintly. Your Majesty, this matter was planned by Zhang Feng. It's reasonable to say that he should solve it. Hearing this, Li Shimin slapped his thigh and said in realization, yes, it was that boy's idea. He should solve it. Everyone nodded secretly as if to say that it was all this boy's fault. Let's go and find that boy. Li Shimin stood up and walked directly to the door, followed by everyone. Zhang Mansion. Zhang Feng was supervising the servants and maids to make cotton-padded clothes. Yesterday's cotton-padded clothes were sold out as soon as they went on the market. He had to hurry up and make some today, or they would be out of stock. Under his tireless guidance, a rough roar came from outside the door. Fengzi, are you home? Zhang Feng pricked up his ears. Yes, it must be old Cheng and old Yu again. These two voices could be heard 2 alleys away. He didn't need to look to know who they were. Zhang Feng walked to the door and saw Lao Li and the others. He smiled faintly and said, I'm home. Come in. Okay, we thought you weren't here. Cheng Yaojin stepped forward and put his arm around Zhang Feng's shoulder and said with a smile. Yuqigong also laughed at the side. Only Li Shimin and Wei Zheng had sullen faces, as if someone owed them money. Seeing this, Zhang Feng said with a smile, What's wrong? Lao Li old Wei, who owes you money? It's all your fault. Li Shimin rolled his eyes at Zhang Feng. After saying that, he walked toward the study of the Zhang residence. Wei Zheng sighed inwardly, glanced at Zhang Feng, and followed Li Shimin. Zhang Feng was confused for a moment. He pointed at Li Shimin's back and said to Cheng Yaojin, What's wrong with Lao Li? What trouble did I cause? Don't pay attention to him. Let's go to the study and get some good wine for me and old He. Cheng Yaojin waved his hand and pulled Zhang Feng into the study. Yes, don't pay attention to him. Bring out your good wine. Yuqigong also laughed at the side. Zhang Feng scratched his head and didn't think too much. He said to Du Ziting, who was working in the courtyard, Old Du, bring 2 jars of good wine to the study and make a few dishes. Du Ziting understood and quickly went to prepare. After saying that, the 3 of them walked to the study with their arms around each other's shoulders. Chapter 1725. In the study, Li Shimin was sitting on a chair with a cigarette in his hand. His face was full of worry. Wei Zheng, Zhang Sun Wuji, and the others were also unhappy. Seeing this, Zhang Feng went up and asked, What's wrong with you guys today? Why are you all the same? Wei Zheng tilted his head and looked at Li Shimin. Seeing that the latter was unwilling to speak, he sighed. He looked at Zhang Feng and said, Fengzi, do you remember the last time when Tubo and Tuyuhun borrowed food? Of course I remember. Zhang Feng took out a cigarette from his waist and walked to the light. He took a deep breath and said, What happened? He could be said to be the leader of this matter. Braised meat was popular at that time. How could he not remember? It's good that you remember. Wei Zheng nodded and continued. I heard from Lord Zhangsun that last night, many spies from Tujue, Tubo, Tuyuhun, Jinla, and other places were caught in Chang. They seem to want your cotton-padded clothes. Want my cotton-padded clothes? Zhang Feng glanced at Wei Zheng as if he had expected this. This is normal. I just didn't expect them to come so quickly. The cotton-padded clothes were a unique thing. To Tujue, Tubo, Tuyuhun, and other places, it was a divine item. Moreover, when the cotton-padded clothes were sold, it had already caused a stir in Chang. Tujue, Tubo, Tuyuhun, and other places were like hungry wolves that smelled meat. How could they let it go? Naturally, they would pounce on it. Therefore, this was not difficult to understand. It was just that he did not expect the other party to come so quickly. The cotton-padded clothes had just been sold and the other party had already known about it. From this point of view, there were many spies from Tujue, Tubo, Tuyuhun, and other countries lurking in Chang, and their strength was not low. Regarding Zhang Feng's prediction, everyone just looked at him in surprise and did not say anything. After all, they also knew how terrifying the benefits of the cotton-padded clothes were. It would be abnormal if they didn't have any ideas about it. Wei Jing nodded and said, "The spies were caught. During the morning court session today, the emperor considered the relationship with Tubo and Tuyuhun and released the spies. However, he was worried that they would ask for the grain from last time." At this time, Li Shimin, who had been silent all this time, interrupted, "That's right, Feng Zi. Last time, it was your idea to borrow food. You have to find a way to make up for this." Hearing this, Zhang Feng glanced at everyone and said with a smile, "I thought it was something big. Just this? Is it worth making you all cry?" Fang Xianling couldn't take it anymore. He said angrily, "Don't talk big, kid. What ideas do you have?" That's right. Even the core ministers of the imperial court had no way to deal with it. What idea did this brat have? Everyone looked at Zhang Feng curiously. Zhang Feng looked at everyone and said with a proud smile, "Don't Tubo and Tuyuhun want the cotton-padded clothes? As long as we use the cotton-padded clothes to shut their mouths, they won't come to the Tang dynasty to ask for grain." As soon as he finished speaking, Li Shimin said with a hint of anger, "Don't you know what cotton-padded clothes mean to Tubo and Tuyuhun? If the cotton-padded clothes were given to these countries, they would not be threatened by the cold, and their national strength would be greatly increased. This was not a good thing for the Tang dynasty." Cheng Yaojin picked up a bowl of wine, swallowed a mouthful, and said with a smile, "Maybe this brat is holding back some evil ideas." Yu Qigong poured himself a bowl of wine and echoed, "That's right. Would he let himself be taken advantage of?" Zhang Feng glanced at everyone and smiled faintly, "Let me ask you first. How much is Tubo and Tuyuhun producing now?" Wei Jing frowned slightly, thought for a moment, and said, "About 10,000 stones a year." Li Shimin nodded. In fact, he didn't know about this. Zhang Feng took a puff of his cigarette and said slowly, "The people in Tubo like silk. Since that's the case, we'll cater to their preferences. We'll use silk made from silk and mulberry silk to exchange for the right to sell cotton-padded clothes. In other words, we'll sell them the right to sell the cotton-padded clothes. If it doesn't work, we can also get some leather products. They're cold all year round, so we can shut the mouths of those Tubo people." Li Shimin frowned as soon as he finished speaking. Exchanging cotton-padded clothes and mulberry silk for the right to sell cotton-padded clothes would make these two countries dependent on the Tang dynasty in the long run. After all, they were cold all year round. Once the cotton-padded clothes were shipped there, they couldn't leave. However, the other party was not a fool. Would they agree? Li Shimin looked at Zhang Feng and asked, "Will they agree with what you said? And it's a little too obvious?" After all, anyone with a discerning eye could tell that this was squeezing the savings of the two countries. The other party might not agree. The current situation doesn't allow them to disagree. Zhang Feng waved his hand and said directly, "We have the initiative now, so we have to be straightforward. Moreover, there's no need to say more about the use of cotton-padded clothes. They will naturally understand. After all, there's a lot of profit in this matter. If they take it, not only can they shut the mouths of those starving people, but they can also stabilize the hearts of their people and stabilize their situation. This will only be beneficial for the Battle of Chiotsi. Because if things go wrong, this battle is likely to lead to an all-out war between the Tang dynasty and the Turks." Chapter 1726. Speaking of this, Zhang Feng seemed to have thought of something. The war between the Tang dynasty and the Turks? Wasn't it the second year of Xinguan that was recorded in history? And now, it was the winter of the second year of Xinguan. Wasn't that the Turks were coming soon? Thinking of this, he frowned. The attack of the Turks was recorded in real records. It was definitely not groundless. Now, they were facing the attack of the Turks, and there were less than a few months left. It seemed that he had to prepare something. Li Shimin saw Zhang Feng's expression and thought that it was not feasible, so he quickly asked, "What's wrong? Fengzi, is it not possible?" Zhang Feng shook his head, and a trace of worry flashed in his eyes. "It's not about the Tubo and Tuyuhun, but I thought of something else." "What is it?" "How could she make a reckless brat like you so worried?" Cheng Yaojin laughed at the side. He was right. Zhang Feng had always acted like a cynical boy, and there were not many things that could make him worry. Cheng Yaojin's words aroused everyone's curiosity. Looking at everyone's puzzled faces, Zhang Feng sighed and said slowly, "This winter, the Turks will come to the Tang dynasty to kidnap." Before he finished speaking, Li Shimin's body suddenly shook, and the cigarette in his hand fell to the ground. He looked at Zhang Feng in horror. "Fengzi, is what you said true?" "Yes, Fengzi, this matter can't be joked about." "Fengzi, how did you know?" Everyone's eyes widened, and they looked at Zhang Feng in surprise. Now, the Tang dynasty and the Turks were at war, and both sides were on high alert. How could they come to the Tang dynasty to kidnap? In other words, the Turks no longer had any other forces to come to the Tang dynasty, so there was no reason for them to plunder the Tang dynasty. Zhang Feng glanced at the crowd, paused, and then said, "I heard my master mention this by chance. He said that there will be a huge snowstorm in the Turks this winter. Due to years of war, frost, drought, and other natural disasters, countless cattle and sheep will be frozen to death. Even people will not be spared. This is the main reason why the Turks came to the Tang dynasty to plunder." "What?" Li Shimin exclaimed. "The Turks can freeze cattle, sheep, and people to death." He had heard of his master, Zhang Feng, more than once. He could be said to be a prophet. Previously, he had predicted a plague of locusts, and in the end, a plague of locusts had really appeared. He didn't have the slightest doubt that there would be a blizzard in the Turkic Khaganate. Originally, he had been worrying about the war in Chiotsi and not having a chance to attack the Turks. This was simply a heaven-sent opportunity. As long as he suddenly launched a surprise attack on the Turks, he would definitely be able to win by surprise. Li Shimin quickly asked, "Fengzi, did your master say anything else? For example, if we take this opportunity to attack the Turks, will we be able to win?" Cheng Yaojin and Yu Qigong at the side heard this and instantly became spirited. They also knew that Zhang Feng was talking about his master, so they naturally believed him without a doubt. Moreover, they were all generals who had obtained their current noble titles by virtue of their military achievements. Although their current noble titles were already the highest, their soldiers, children, and grandchildren had yet to achieve any military achievements. They must not let go of this opportunity. Once they succeeded in taking down the Turks, their subordinates, children, and grandchildren would be safe for several generations. Zhang Feng glanced at the fervent gazes of the crowd and sighed. "This won't do. Even though the Turkic Khaganate will lose their livestock in this blizzard, a starving camel is still bigger than a horse. How can we take them down so easily? Moreover, the Tang dynasty still doesn't know much about the environment in the Turks' territory. Once they enter, they will be trapped. If they counterattack at the last moment, the gains won't make up for the losses for the Tang dynasty soldiers. This won't do, that won't do either. You're really making me anxious." Cheng Yaojin rolled his eyes at Zhang Feng, picked up the wine bowl on the table and drank it in one gulp. Yu Qigong at the side couldn't sit still anymore. He glared at Zhang Feng. "Then, Fengzi, what do you think the Tang dynasty should do? Are we just going to wait for the Turks to come and rob us?" "That's right. Since we can't attack by force, we can't just wait for the Turks to come and rob us, right? One must know that those fellows eat people without spitting out the bones. Don't expect them to treat the people on the Tang dynasty's border kindly." Li Shimin waved his hand, indicating Cheng Yaojin and Yu Qigong to stop quarreling. Seeing this, the two resentfully glared at Zhang Feng. Each of them held a wine jar and didn't say anything. "Fengzi, although their words aren't pleasant to hear, they make some sense. The Turks are in great trouble now. This is a good opportunity for the Tang dynasty to take them down. How can we let it go so easily?" Li Shimin looked at Zhang Feng and said seriously. He himself very much wanted to take down the Turks. Since the Wei River alliance, this matter could be said to be the biggest knot in his heart, and also a shame. At that time, the two fellows of the Eastern Turks, Xieli and Tuli, didn't abide by the treaty and suddenly sent troops. The main force entered the Wei River and went straight to Chang'an city. At that time, Chang'an's military strength was empty, and everyone was in danger. He had no choice but to sign another treaty with Xieli and Tuli on the Wei River Bridge. Although the danger of Chang'an was temporarily alleviated, this matter also became a thorn in his heart that couldn't be removed for a long time. Now that there was such an opportunity, how could he let it go? Zhang Feng looked at Li Shimin deeply. He knew what the other party was thinking. Didn't he want to take this opportunity to destroy the Turks? Chapter 1727. It was a good idea, but how could the Turks be so easy to destroy? You should know that the Turks have always lived in tribes. They usually only care about themselves, but once there is a threat, they will immediately gather together and form a powerful force. This kind of force can't be underestimated. In addition, the weather over there is extremely cold, and the night and the day are two different worlds. Even if the Tang Dynasty soldiers wear cotton-padded clothes, they can't withstand such a sudden drop in weather. Plus, we don't know much about the Turks, so we'll just be courting death if we go there. This, Li Shimin frowned. Such a good opportunity, but Zhang Feng actually asked him to give it up? If he really gave it up, once the Turks recovered, it would be even more difficult to fight in the future. But if they really attacked, according to Feng Zi, the Tang Dynasty soldiers had never experienced such weather before. Even if they wore cotton-padded clothes, how could they withstand it? Moreover, the Tang Dynasty didn't know much about the Turks. If they were ambushed or shot, the Tang Dynasty soldiers would die in a foreign country. The most important thing was the counterattack before death. He himself was a commander in war, so he deeply understood that the potential before death was very terrifying. Li Shimin sighed, looked at Zhang Feng and asked, "Then, Feng Zi, if the Tang Dynasty doesn't attack, how should we deal with the Turks?" Even if they didn't attack, they had to take some precautions. They couldn't let this guy get any benefits. Hearing Li Shimin's words, Cheng Yaojin and Yu Qigong immediately lost their patience. The wine in their hands was no longer fragrant. They threw away the wine jar and looked at Li Shimin. If these bastards are not killed, sooner or later, they will be a threat to the Tang Dynasty. The two were filled with righteous indignation and high spirits. They were a little selfish and wanted to earn some merits for their descendants and subordinates. But more than that, he wanted to get rid of this scourge for the Tang Dynasty and protect the people of the Tang Dynasty. After all, they were the Duke of Yi and Duke of Lu of the Tang Dynasty, so they were aware of this. Seeing this, Li Shimin glared at the two of them. Only then did they angrily sit on the chair and pant. Zhang Feng glanced at Cheng Yaojin and Yu Qigong. He took a deep puff of his cigarette and exhaled the smoke. Then he looked at Li Shimin and said slowly, "Actually, I can understand old Cheng and old Yu's feelings. Those bastards must be killed, but not now. The most important thing for us now is to lay out the plan." "Lay out?" Li Shimin asked in surprise. "How?" Just now, when he saw Zhang Feng's expression, he knew that he had a way. Otherwise, he would not have told him the news so easily. Zhang Feng swept his gaze across the crowd and said seriously, "Firstly, scorched earth and cleared fields. This scorched earth and cleared fields is a vicious strategy. You have to be vicious to your enemies and to your own people. Aren't those Turks going to invade Great Tang and plunder resources at the borders? Then we won't leave anything for them. As long as you tell the Lord Zhangsun to let the Lord Zhangsun submit a memorial to His Majesty, let the soldiers at the border take the people and flee to Chang. Before they leave, burn the houses, kill the livestock, take the gold and silver, and everything that can be taken. If we don't leave anything for the Turks, I'll see what they will rob." Li Shimin narrowed his eyes. Obviously, he was thinking carefully. The scorched earth strategy had been recorded a long time ago. Sun Yu of the Three Kingdoms had used this strategy. Although he destroyed his own things, he also dealt a heavy blow to the Turks who came to rob. They could not rob anything. Without supplies, they would be less of a threat to the Tang Dynasty. Wei Jing stroked his beard and said, "This strategy is good. At least it can make the Turks return empty-handed." Zhang Sun Wuji and Fang Xianling also nodded secretly, thinking that this strategy was feasible. "Feng Zi, go on." Li Shimin reminded him. Zhang Feng nodded and continued, "The second strategy is to attack the mind. As I said just now, although the Turks are powerful, they are pieced together by tribes. Once people are separated, their beliefs will be different. For example, the Eastern Turks worship the wolf god, the Western Turks believe in the longevity heaven, and the Eastern and Western Turks are composed of various tribes. Among the tribes, there are other beliefs such as the fire god, the water god, the god of plagues, and so on. Li Shimin nodded and said, "Indeed, the Turks have many beliefs. Almost every tribe has its own god. Because of different beliefs, there are long wars between the tribes, and the casualties are not less than that of a war. However, what does this have to do with what you said? He was the ruler of a country. Naturally, he had to understand the habits and customs of his opponents. Only in this way could he win every battle. Long ago, he heard that there was a dried wolf bone in the tent of the leader of the Eastern Turks. That was the heavenly wolf god, which was their belief. The Western Turks believed in the longevity heaven. They believed that everything in front of them was given by God. Therefore, they would pray 3 times a day, including during meals. Chapter 1728. In addition to these, there were many other beliefs. But, why did this guy mention this now? Wei Zheng and the others were also confused. Zhang Feng said with a smirk, "Most of the Turks are ignorant, so there are many gods. Their beliefs are so modeled that there must be feuds between the tribes. It was only because Xieli forced them to live together. Think about it, if someone who has a big grudge against you suddenly speaks ill of you, can you accept it? Of course not." Yu Qigong jumped 2 feet high. "I knew this guy was not a good guy. It turns out that he was waiting for this." Zhang Sun Wuji narrowed his eyes and smiled. "You want to use the gods of the Turks to make a fuss, don't you?" Li Shimin suddenly understood. "I knew it. This guy took such a long detour with me. It turns out that this is the reason." Zhang Feng smiled but said nothing. Yu Qigong was a little confused. "What do you mean? What's the use of the Turk stuff?" Cheng Yaojin patted him on the shoulder and said with a smile, "You don't know this, do you? This guy wants the Turks to have internal strife." "That's right." Zhang Feng nodded and said, "The Turks have many gods. As long as the Tang dynasty sends people to set up a conspiracy, spread some rumors, sow discord, and criticize each other, in less than a day, the Turks will bite each other and have internal strife. Moreover, we can use the gods to talk about the blizzard. Don't they believe in the gods? This is a good opportunity to push the blame of the blizzard onto the god's head, making all the Turks think that the other tribe worshipped the wrong evil god, causing this blizzard. This way, the entire grassland will fall into chaos." Yu Qigong finally understood. He slapped Zhang Feng on the shoulder and said sarcastically, "Why didn't I see that you are so bad before?" He used to think that this kid was just frivolous, but now it seemed that he was really full of evil tricks. Cheng Yaojin glanced at Zhang Feng with some dissatisfaction. "Yeah, not only is he full of bad ideas, but he's also a miser. We've already finished our wine, but he doesn't even know how to refill it. What do the two of you know? Although this plan is a little poisonous, the Turks don't need to talk about morality." Li Shimin rolled his eyes at Cheng Yaojin and Li Yundong. "That's right. What's the point of talking about morality when dealing with Turks? Just kill them and be done with it." Zhang Feng's eyes flashed with a fierce look. He did not have any good feelings towards these foreign races. Those who are not of our clan will definitely have different intentions. Back then, during the Jin dynasty, the 5 barbarians were in chaos. They occupied the northern part of the Central Plains and established political power for decades. At that time, the barbarians viewed the Han people as pigs and dogs. They called the Han people 2-legged sheep. Not only did they kill them wantonly, they even roasted and ate them. The entire land was littered with bones, and there was no smoke for thousands of miles. That period of time was the death of the entire race. It was also the humiliation of the entire race. Luckily, the national hero Ran Min appeared and issued the order to kill the barbarians. Only then did they have a chance to breathe. Thinking of this, Zhang Feng's eyes flashed with a strange light. If Ran Min could use the order to kill the barbarians, then he could use it as well. The Han people had irreconcilable enmity with any foreign race. Perhaps because he saw Zhang Feng's fierce look, Li Shimin could not help but ask, "Feng Zi, are there any other problems?" Hearing these words, everyone turned their gazes to Zhang Feng. Zhang Feng swept his gaze over the crowd and paused for a moment before saying, "That's right. Although the first 2 plans can slow down the Turks' invasion, it is impossible to eliminate them all. The fear of hunger will still make them invade. Damn, after all this time, it still doesn't work. Then let's fight them. That's right. If it really doesn't work, then let's fight. Cheng Yaojin and Yu Qigong spoke from the side. Why you guys in such a hurry? Listen to me, I have a third plan. Zhang Feng rolled his eyes at the two of them and said slowly, do you guys still remember Ran Min? Hearing these words, Li Shimin's eyes flashed with a strange light. He was the emperor, and the emperor on horseback. The two words Ran Min were like thunder to his ears. Now that this brat mentioned Ran Min, could it be? Everyone became nervous and looked at Li Shimin, especially Zhang Sun Wuji. When he heard Ran Min's name, he knew what Zhang Feng was going to say next. The order to kill the barbarians. One must know that Li Shimin also had a trace of barbarian blood in him. Wasn't this just asking for trouble? However, Li Shimin didn't seem to have any abnormalities. He just smiled faintly and said, Fengzi, continue. Zhang Feng nodded and said, although the first two plans can resist the Turks, once they unite again, they will be an amazing force. The fear of hunger will make them do anything. Therefore, we need to mobilize the power of the masses. The Tang dynasty doesn't have much, but we have a lot of people. There are also many Lulin and rangers on the northern border. As long as you go to Lord Zhangsun and ask the imperial court to issue a decree to kill the barbarians, the imperial court will reward you with money for every Turk's head. This will arouse the determination of the entire Tang dynasty to resist the Turks. That's right. Li Shimin praised. The north is located on the border. When the time comes, once the Turks recover, they will still come to plunder. Moreover, most of them are riding horses. There are many Lulin on the border of the Tang dynasty. If we mobilize these people, it will be a big force. If one person can't kill them, we can use two people. We can definitely resist the Turks. Chapter 1729. Although he had some Hu blood in him, he didn't have a good influence on these Hu people. Otherwise, he wouldn't have praised Ran Min and killed Hu Ling. Zhang Feng nodded. These three stratagems of mine are all linked to one another. If we use all three stratagems together, we will definitely be able to scare the Turks so badly that they will never dare to raid the Great Tang again. Ha boy, why didn't I see that you are so smart before? Cheng Yaojin patted Zhang Feng's shoulder and laughed. Do you think I'm like you, a boar? Zhang Feng glanced at Cheng Yaojin. You little brat. Cheng Yaojin was about to scold back, but found Li Shimin's pair of tiger-like eyes staring at him and quickly shut his mouth. Feng, it's getting late. We have to go back and discuss how to report to Lord Zhangsun. Li Shimin smiled. Yes, this is indeed a big deal. You should go back and find Lord Zhangsun. You must tell him the seriousness of this matter. Don't be careless. Zhang Feng nodded and reminded. Okay, then we'll go first. After that, Li Shimin cupped his hands and quickly walked out of the room. Everyone followed closely behind. You must remember the seriousness of this matter. Zhang Feng reminded him loudly. Li Shimin waved his hand, indicating that he understood. Outside the door, Li Shimin put his hands behind his back and looked gloomy. This time, he came to the Zhang mansion just to solve the problem of Tubo and Tuyuhun. He didn't expect Zhang Feng to bring up the Turks. This was truly a case of one wave rising after another before the first wave had even subsided. However, he never doubted Zhang Feng's words. Instead, he trusted him. Although he had 3 plans to defeat the enemy, he still had a trace of worry in his heart. This might be the sense of crisis as an emperor. He turned his head and glanced at everyone. Everyone, go back to the imperial study to discuss political affairs. After that, Li Shimin walked forward without looking back. Everyone looked at each other and followed closely behind without saying a word. No one spoke a word along the way. Everyone rushed back to the imperial study. Li Shimin sat on the dragon throne with one hand supporting his head and the other holding a cigarette. You all heard what Feng Zi said just now. Tell me what you think. Everyone looked at each other, but no one had the intention to speak. After all, this matter was far too important. The Turkic invasion had yet to be confirmed, so how could they speak of it? Li Shimin lit the cigarette on the oil lamp and took a puff. He glanced at the crowd and finally fixed his eyes on Wei Zheng. Wei Zheng, you say something. Wei Jing cupped his hands and said, "Your Majesty, I just heard from Feng Zi that this matter was said by his master. I think it is most likely true." Li Shimin nodded and exhaled a mouthful of smoke. "Well, to go on. I think the 3 plans Feng Zi mentioned just now are feasible. First, the Turkic people are located at the northern border of the Tang dynasty. Once they invade, they will cause immeasurable losses to the people at the border. If we evacuate the people and supplies at the border, the Turkic people who travel long distances will not be able to get supplies. Without horses and food, we can turn from passive to active. Second, according to the report of the spies of the Tang dynasty and the Turkic people, there are indeed many gods in the Turkic people, and there are often wars between the tribes. Third, the foreign races have always had a great hatred for us, not to mention the Lulin and wanderers at the border. Once the order to kill them is issued, it will definitely cause a reaction." Li Shimin glanced at everyone. "What about you? What do you think?" "I think it is feasible." "I second it." Li Shimin nodded and said, "In that case, Yu Qigong and Qing Yaojin will be in charge of scorching the defense and clearing the wilderness. They will evacuate all the people at the border. If they can take away the things, take them away. If they can't, burn them. Wei Zheng will be in charge of contacting the spies of the Tang dynasty in the Turkic people and let them leak information to cause a disturbance in the grassland. The order to kill them will be issued after these 2 things are done." "Yes, Your Majesty. Yes, Your Majesty." Everyone bowed. After receiving the order, Yu Qigong and Qing Yaojin immediately left the imperial study. As generals, they naturally knew the importance of this matter. They took 2 horses from the guards and mobilized 10,000 people to gallop toward the border. The border was not very far, but it was not close either. Even if they rushed without stopping, it would still take a day and a night. But when they thought of the people at the border, they were shocked. In order to reduce the casualties of the Tang dynasty, they ordered that everyone could only rest for 2 hours a day. Finally, under the tireless rushing of the people, the large group arrived at Yanmen Pass on the 3rd day. When the soldiers guarding the pass saw Qing Yaojin and Yu Qigong holding the token in their hands, they quickly let them pass. The north had been barren since ancient times. At a glance, there were only deserts and very few people. Because the people at the border had to resist the invasion of the Turkic people and the blizzards, most of them lived together and built a large village. However, there was only sand in front of them. There was no living thing at all. This made Yu Qigong dumbfounded. "Alas, old Qing, what about the people at the border?" Qing Yaojin took the straw in his mouth and glanced around. He could not help but frown and say, "How do we know?" "Send 2 soldiers to take a look first." Yu Qigong glanced at the soldier leading the horse and said, "Old Wang, give me the reins. You take a group of people to look for the people nearby." The soldier called Old Wang nodded and handed the reins to Yu Qigong. He then led a group of people and disappeared in front. Chapter 1730. After a while, Old Wang came back with a tall and thin man. Old Wang bowed and said, "General, when I went to look for the village just now, I met a local resident and brought him back." Qing Yaojin and Yu Qigong looked at the man in front of them, and their brows slowly furrowed. Although this person was a man, his body was not as strong as the women in Chang'an city. He was as thin as a match, and his eyes had no spirit at all. They were turbid and had sunken deep into their sockets. His hair was messy like a bird's nest, and his clothes were tattered, with only half a piece of cloth covering his buttocks. In fact, Qing Yaojin had already guessed that the border was extremely poor before he came, but he didn't expect it to be so difficult. There was not even a complete piece of clothing to cover the body. Moreover, looking at the man in front of him, it seemed that he hadn't eaten for a few days. Alas, the people of the Tang dynasty at the border not only had to endure the invasion of the Turks, but they also had to worry about food. Just as Qing Yaojin was thinking about how to ask, Yu Qigong spoke first. "Man, let me ask you. What's your name? Are you from the border?" Hearing this, the man quickly lowered his head and looked like he didn't want to speak. Obviously, this person was often bullied. He was timid and very afraid of officials. Seeing this, Qing Yaojin rolled his eyes at Yu Qigong, then looked at the man and said, "Man, don't be afraid. We are not bad people. We are soldiers of the Tang dynasty." This time, we came to the border to carry out military affairs. We also came to ask you about it. Can you answer my question? Old Cheng was indeed a rough man. When he saw that the man was afraid, he quickly changed his way of communication. However, he couldn't blame him. He said that he had brought a group of people with him. Who knew what he was doing? Besides, this was the border. It was necessary to be cautious. When the man heard Qing Yaojin's words, he raised his head slightly and glanced at him. Seeing the latter smile back, he asked in a hoarse voice with uncertainty, "Really? Are you here to ask us about it?" Cheng Yaojin smiled kindly and nodded. Hearing this, the man said cautiously, "My name is Ergo. I'm from the border." Upon hearing that, Yu Qigong was instantly overjoyed. It's good that he's from the borders. Quick, bring us to him. Before he could finish his sentence, Qing Yaojin kicked him. Lao Tzu, shut up. Yu Qigong couldn't take it anymore. Old Cheng, what are you doing? Qing Yaojin rolled his eyes at Yu Qigong and ignored him. He had already cursed him 1,000,000 times in his heart. Then he looked at Ergo and said, "Ergo, you don't look like you've eaten. Eat something first." After that, Qing Yaojin winked at the soldier leading the horse. The soldier immediately understood and opened the bag he carried with him, revealing a pile of steamed buns and a few pieces of jerky. Instantly, Ergo's eyes were attracted by the white steamed buns. He licked his dry lips and swallowed his saliva. From time to time, he would steal glances at Qing Yaojin from the corner of his eyes. "Eat it. It's all for you." Qing Yaojin smiled. "You're really giving it to me?" Ergo asked uncertainly. In his impression, soldiers were all fierce and vicious. None of them were as nice as Qing Yaojin. He even gave him food. It was already good enough that he didn't exploit him. For example, last time, a group of soldiers came from the border and took away a few stones of grain. Otherwise, he wouldn't have come out to look for wild vegetables. Of course, old Cheng, don't lie. Eat it. It's all for you. Qing Yaojin gave him a kind smile. Ergo looked at Qing Yaojin. Seeing that he didn't seem to be lying, he didn't care anymore. Like a hungry wolf, he snatched the white steamed bun and started eating. "Old Cheng, you didn't let him bring us to look for people just now because you wanted to give him steamed buns?" Yu Qigong pointed at Ergo, somewhat puzzled. "You can say that. Most of the people at the border are afraid of soldiers. Just look at Ergo. If we directly tell them why we're here, I'm afraid they won't accept it. We'll have to slowly communicate with them later." Qing Yaojin looked at Ergo and nodded. "All right then. I'll listen to you." Yu Qigong nodded. A moment later, Ergo finished all the steamed buns in his hands. There wasn't even much jerky left. Qing Yaojin felt his heart ache when he saw this. However, thinking about the people, he suppressed the anger in his heart. "Ergo, are you full? Can you bring us to your neighbor now?" Hearing this, Ergo quickly licked the meat in his hand and burped. "Yes, I can." He now had a good impression of this amiable guy. However, the same couldn't be said for the ugly and dark guy. It was his fault for not giving him any food just now. Qing Yaojin was delighted. "Then you lead the way. We'll follow behind." With that, he waved at the soldiers behind him. Ergo led the way. The Gobi Desert was very big. At first glance, everything was gray and hazy. Ergo led the group through many twists and turns. Finally, they stopped in front of a hill. "There, that's our village." Ergo pointed not far away. Qing Yaojin squeezed the horse's belly and took 2 steps forward. A huge village came into view. It was basically made of straw or mud. Outside the village, there were a few men patrolling back and forth with iron weapons. Occasionally, the cries of livestock could be heard from the alley. Chapter 1731. Let's go, Ergo. Take us to the village. Qing Yaojin looked at Ergo and smiled. Ergo nodded and walked toward the village. Qing Yaojin and Yu Qigong followed closely behind. However, something unexpected happened. Before they reached the entrance of the village, a series of uneven roars could be heard. "Who is it? Stop. Don't go any further." The people who spoke were the men with iron weapons at the entrance of the village. "Whoa!" Qing Yaojin quickly reined in his horse. He took a closer look and found that the 3 men in front of him were as skinny as Ergo, but their eyes were extremely fierce. No wonder they were used to guard the village. At this time, the soldier who led Qing Yaojin's horse stepped forward and said, "Little brothers, please don't misunderstand. We are soldiers of the Tang dynasty. We are here to express our condolences." They were here to persuade people to move, not to fight. The tactics used on the battlefield could not be used on civilians. Condolences? Who are you kidding? Last time, a group of soldiers came to the pass and said they were here to express their condolences. Later, they stole our food and ran away, leaving us hungry. Are you with them? The leader of the men stepped forward and waved the iron fork in his hand, filled with righteous indignation. What? Damn it. Cheng Yaojin's eyes widened in anger. He clenched his right fist and said, "Who the hell is so bold to do something under Lao Tzu's nose?" He was a man who hated evil. Besides, he had been in the army for many years, so he could not bear to hear such things. The people at the border were already suffering enough. Usually, they had to suffer from blizzards and Turkic kidnappings. He did not expect the soldiers of the Tang dynasty to kidnap them. These guys were not human. Not only him, but the soldiers behind him were also enraged. They were all soldiers under Qing Yaojin and Yu Qigong, and had always been disciplined. They didn't even dare to think about doing such a thing, let alone do it. Today, someone actually did it, and it was even at the border. This made everyone's anger reach the peak. That's right. Mother****, it's that bastard. Tell old Shang and me. When we go back, I'll chop him into pieces. Yu Qigong, who had been silent all this while, finally couldn't take it anymore. He clenched his right fist and placed it on his chest, assuring everyone. Cheng Yaojin also nodded. Even if Big Lao He didn't say it, he would have said it himself. These scum thought that they could do whatever they wanted at the border. Lao Tzu would definitely chop them up alive and report to His Majesty to have their entire families executed. Although everyone was filled with righteous indignation, the other party didn't seem to believe them. He just replied coldly, "Come on, you soldiers are all the same. Stop acting." As soon as he finished speaking, Buttface stepped forward and said, "Zhu Zi, ugly boy, please don't misunderstand. They are really here to express their concern." It didn't matter if Buttface didn't say anything. Maybe he didn't notice Su Quebec. But as soon as Buttface spoke, everyone started to criticize Su Quebec. "Ergo, you mother****, why are you with these soldiers? Did you bring these people here? Quick, tell us, did you betray the village?" Buttface quickly waved his hand and explained anxiously, "No, how could I betray the village? These people are really here to express their concern. They even gave me something to eat just now. If you don't believe me, take a look." After saying that, Buttface took out a half-black, half-white steamed bun and showed it to everyone. He had stolen it when no one was looking. He had been holding it in front of his chest, so it had become half-black and half-white. Everyone looked at it and their faces were full of shock. They had never seen such a white steamed bun before. There was no such thing in the village. The only possibility was that it was from these soldiers. It seemed that Buttface wasn't lying. But why did these soldiers come to the village? Were they really here to express their concern? They didn't believe this nonsense. It seemed that they needed Buttface to prove it. "Buttface, come here." Zhu Zi waved at Buttface. Buttface looked back at Qing Yaojin, who nodded at him. Then he slowly walked to the village entrance. "Buttface, give me the steamed bun." Zhu Zi put down the fork in his hand and looked at the white steamed bun in Buttface's hand. Buttface hesitated for a moment, but still handed the white steamed bun to Zhu Zi. Zhu Zi picked up the white steamed bun and gnawed on it, making everyone's hearts itch. When the white steamed bun was finished, Zhu Zi looked at everyone. "You guys stay here and don't let them in. I'll go and tell the old man." After saying that, Zhu Zi pulled Buttface into the village. The two men who were left behind were still looking at Cheng Yaojin and the others with forks in their hands. Cheng Yaojin didn't know whether to laugh or cry at this scene. If he wanted to force his way in, these two men could stop him. However, from the beginning he didn't want to use force. The people at the border were already suffering enough. How could he have the heart to bully them? And most importantly, this time he came with a mission. After a while, Zhu Zi and Buttface came back. They were supporting an old man with a walking stick. He was about 60 years old and walked very slowly. The old man had sparse hair on his head. He staggered as if he would fall down if he didn't pay attention. Behind them, there was a group of men. There were about 20 of them. Some of them were holding sticks, while others were holding iron weapons. They looked like they were coming in a menacing manner. Chapter 1732. Although these people looked ferocious, they had a common shortcoming, which was that they were thin. Some of them were even skin and bones. No one knew what they usually ate. Another one was that they were poor. Almost all of their clothes were rags. Those who were a little better had a few patches. Otherwise, their buttocks would be exposed. He finally knew why there were no women here. They were not wearing clothes. If a woman came out, wouldn't she be naked? Cheng Yaojin sighed secretly. He had never been to the border before, so he didn't know that life here was so hard. Who are you? What do you want to do in our village? The old man with a crutch was supported by Ergo and Zhuzi. He stepped forward and asked, "Sir, we were sent by His Majesty of the Tang Dynasty to visit you." Cheng Yaojin smiled and said, "My name is Cheng Yaojin. He is Yu Qigong." The old man was respected. Looking at this old man's age, he didn't even need to salute His Majesty. Moreover, this old man should be the most important person in the village. Cheng Yaojin? Yu Qigong? The old man savored it carefully, as if he was recalling something. Suddenly, the old man seemed to think of something and exclaimed, "What? You too are the gods of war of our Tang dynasty?" The people behind him also seemed to think of something. They looked at Cheng Yaojin and Yu Qigong in horror. "I finally see living people. The gods of war of our Tang dynasty have come to our village. No, I have to kowtow to my ancestors." After that, the man who was about to kowtow ran back to the village. Obviously, they had all heard of the two. This was normal. Cheng Yaojin had followed Li Shimin to conquer the world in his early years. Who didn't know about him? Not to mention Yu Qigong, who had been famous in the Sui dynasty. Now that the two big shots had come to the village, everyone was excited. Coupled with the troops, Cheng Yaojin's smiling face, and Yu Qigong's ugly face, no one doubted anything. Other than a few bare-bottomed brats scratching their heads, the others were all smiling at the crowd. Hearing someone call them war gods, Cheng Yaojin and Yu Qigong's faces were filled with pride. Their mouths were almost raised to the sky. "That's right. We are the gods of war of the Tang dynasty. This time, His Majesty the Emperor specially sent us here to greet you." Fortunately, there were still people in the borderlands who knew them. Otherwise, this matter would be difficult to handle. A group of strangers came to ask you to move. Would you move? Although it might be better in the future, who knew what would happen in the future? But now, things were different. With the titles of Duke of Lu and Duke of Yi, the other side was eager to move. "Great. I didn't think that two big shots would come to our desolate land. Congratulations. Please come into the village." The wrinkled old man put on a smile and extended his hand to welcome them. Although there were a few people who didn't know what was going on, they still didn't dare to disobey the old man's words. They immediately stepped aside and expressed their welcome. Cheng Yaojin smiled at the old man and said, Then I'll have to thank Elder." Afterward, he turned to the people behind him and said, "Set up camp here. Don't disturb the people. In addition, give half of the food and clothes to the people." Hearing this, the soldiers behind him hurriedly opened their bags and gave all the food they had brought to the people. These soldiers were basically common people. They knew the pain of not having enough to eat, and they knew even more about the bone-chilling cold. Under the strict military discipline of Cheng Yaojin and Yu Qigong, they had always been soldiers who protected the people. Thus, they did not hesitate or doubt Cheng Yaojin's orders. The moment they received the food and clothes, the old man and the people behind him almost burst into tears. Their bodies trembled as they prostrated on the ground and loudly cried out. The heavens have finally opened their eyes. General Tianxi has brought us food. We don't have to worry about starving to death. At this sight, Cheng Yaojin and Yu Qigong were both shocked. Before he started the army, he was also a common person. However, he was slightly stronger than them. It was during this chaotic era that he was able to make a name for himself. Otherwise, They would not even know where they would be now. Seeing how excited the people were after receiving the food and clothes, they also felt a sense of satisfaction. Get up quickly, elder. There's no need to be so polite. Cheng Yaojin helped the old man up and smiled. He had never been bowed to by such an old man before. He could not accept it. The old man was slowly helped up by Ergu. Then he looked at Cheng Yaojin and smiled. Thank you, generals, for bringing us food. Please come into the village to talk. Cheng Yaojin was naturally happy. He and Yu Qigong brought 2 guards and followed the crowd into the village. As soon as they entered the village, they saw a dilapidated scene. The roofs of the thatched houses were full of holes. Most of the pillars in front of the door had been eaten by insects. If it rained, wouldn't they freeze to death? The alley was eerily quiet. Other than the sound of people's footsteps, no other sounds could be heard. As they continued walking, they could vaguely hear the sound of crying. It sounded like a woman's voice. Elder, this is? Cheng Yaojin pointed ahead and asked. Sigh. The old man sighed and looked ahead. That's a widow. Her husband has been dead for a year. She hides in that thatched house every day and cries alone. Chapter 1733. She's been dead for a year. Why didn't she come out and find a man to marry? Yu Qigong interjected. Cheng Yaojin rolled his eyes at him. What a sore spot. Is that something for you to worry about? Although Yu Qigong's words were inappropriate, the old man didn't mind. Of course she wants to come out, but the only clothes in the house were buried with her husband. If she comes out, she'll have to be naked. Cheng Yaojin shook his head. He didn't expect women at the border to be naked. Then how does she eat? Yu Qigong tilted his head. He was also curious about this. The people here didn't even have enough to eat, so how did the widow who didn't go out eat? She has a good friend who lends her clothes at night. At night, she'll go out to dig for wild vegetables and fruits. Usually, when we have extra vegetables, we'll ask the woman to send them to her. If we don't have any, she can only starve. Old man remembered that once, she didn't eat for 3 days. The woman went to see her and thought she was dead. The old man shook his head and expressed sympathy for the widow's experience. Cheng Yaojin and Yu Qigong looked at the source of the crying. If it wasn't for the fact that the woman was naked, they might have already rushed in. Damn, if the woman didn't have clothes to wear, how was she going to live? Wear Lao Tzu's clothes. But that was just a thought. They took a look and continued walking. After all, the most important thing was to persuade these people to move away. As long as they left, they could escape from their current predicament. The group continued walking into the alley. After a while, a house made of mud came into view. Finally, there was a house that looked passable. Although it looked passable, it wasn't much different from the other thatched houses. The roof was also thatched. The good thing was that there were windows. However, the bamboo paper on the windows had all been shredded. They were barely strung together with the thatched roof. I've embarrassed myself in front of the 2 generals. This is my residence. The old man stood at the door and looked at the house. Cheng Yaojin forced a smile. He didn't know what to say. Creak. The door opened and the old man entered the room first. There was nothing inside, only 3 stone benches. These should be the seats. Generals, please have a seat. The old man pointed at the stone stool beside him. Cheng Yaojin and Yu Qigong did not decline. They were both soldiers and had even sat on corpses before, let alone rocks. After sitting down, Cheng Yaojin took the lead and said, Sir, we're here not only to express our condolences, but also to take you away from here. Take us away? The old man couldn't react for a moment. One had to know that they lived at the border, and no one had ever cared about them. They had to prepare everything by themselves. Now, someone actually wanted to take them away? Yes, old man. His Majesty has sent an imperial edict. Considering the suffering of the people at the border, he is preparing to move you to places like Guanyi and Chang'an. Cheng Yaojin's face did not turn red and his heart did not skip a beat. He decided to tell a lie. From the moment he entered the village, he had a deep feeling that the people living at the border were extremely bitter. If they were suddenly told that the Turks were coming to kidnap them, coupled with the fear of being invaded all year round, they would probably panic. However, if His Majesty had issued an imperial edict for them to move, the effect would be very different. These people lived at the border all year round. Once they heard about His Majesty, they would definitely be in awe and beg to go with him. The truth was just as Qing Yaojin thought. When the old man heard that His Majesty wanted them to move, his entire body trembled. He even threw away his walking stick and knelt on the ground to thank His Majesty. His Majesty finally remembers us. His Majesty, the old man's face was covered in tears. His stooped body could not hide the excitement in his heart. In fact, at his age, even if he saw Li Shimin, he did not need to bow. There was etiquette. As the saying went, the elderly were respected. It was just that he did not know if Lao Li, who was far away in Chang'an, could accept this bow. Cheng Yaojin saw that the old man was getting more and more excited. He quickly went forward to help him up. "Sir, there's no need to be polite. If you have the time, quickly gather everyone together. We'll leave as soon as possible." Hearing this, the old man grabbed his walking stick and rushed out of the door with more agility than the young man. Yes, I'm old and muddle-headed. I'll quickly gather everyone." Cheng Yaojin looked at the old man's back and could not help but laugh. Just now, this old man looked like he couldn't walk the Dao. Now, he felt like he could kill a tiger with a punch. Sheng Province and Feng Province had already entered the severe winter season. The whistling northern wind, wrapped in strong cold wind, whistled and raged in the wind, wanting to blow away everything on the ground. However, at this moment, a group of armored soldiers knocked on the doors of the people's houses in the wind and snow. They then hurriedly helped the people leave the place where their ancestors had lived for generations. After they left, their houses were all knocked down. Not even a single piece of bamboo was left intact. Although these soldiers could not bear to do this, this was a military order. Moreover, they were about to fight with that old thief Tuli. It was said that these things would very likely become the Turks' armaments. Chapter 1734. At this time, such a large-scale migration had already spread to the entire Feng Province and Xing Province. The whistling north wind ruthlessly blew on the faces of the migrating people. Their clothes were not enough to cover their bodies, and they could not bear the cold weather. The soldiers gave their extra clothes to the people to barely resist the cold wind and allow them to continue migrating. The people did not have any resistance to this migration. After all, the border was a wild land, and it was not suitable to stay for long. The weather here was not something people could bear. Moreover, the Turks were about to invade. If they stayed, they would only be sending themselves to death or becoming slaves of the Turks. Of course, Li Shimin would not allow such a thing to happen. This time, he sent Qing Yaojin and Yu Qigong here to carry out this mission. Feng Province, Provincial Governor Manor. The north wind whistled, and the sky was filled with snow. The entire manor was covered in a layer of silver. In the huge courtyard, there was a sea of migrating people sitting around. As they did not have extra clothes, they hugged each other to keep warm. The raging fire around them could not warm up the weather. "Mother, I'm cold." A child snuggled into the arms of a madam. "It's okay. You won't be cold when you sleep." The madam used the only clothes she had to wrap the little girl. In the manor, Qing Yaojin and Yu Qigong sat around the fire to keep warm. Beside them, there was a tall and thin man wearing a tattered military uniform. This person was the provincial governor of Feng Province, Shi Tian. At this time, there was a rush of footsteps outside the door. When he turned around, he saw a guard walking over with quick steps. "Sir, the people near Feng Province and Sheng Province are all migrating to our Feng Province manor. We can't take them all in." "What?" Shi Tian exclaimed. "How can there be so many people? What should we do?" He was no longer in the mood to keep warm. He stood up and paced around the hall. After a while, he finally stopped. He looked at Qing Yaojin and Yu Qigong anxiously. "My two high dukes, what is going on? Why are there so many people migrating?" "Sigh," Yu Qigong sighed, "because we have to prepare for war." Hearing this, Shi Tian was shocked. He thought to himself, not good. Was something going to happen at the border? Or the soldiers of Feng Province did not even have enough to eat. They did not even have good military uniforms. How could they fight? Thinking of this, he could not help but put on a worried expression. My two good Guogongduks, the soldiers of Fengzhou Prefecture, don't even have food. They are all naked. If there is a war, we can't resist. Moreover, in this kind of weather, we will die if we go out. How can we fight? Why don't the two of you talk to His Majesty and transfer me back to Chang? As he spoke, he glanced at Qing Yaojin and Yu Qigong from the corner of his eyes. Bastard. Qing Yaojin threw away the fire stick in his hand and stood up abruptly. He stared at Shirtian with his huge eyes and said, "You bastard, as a soldier, how can you say such words of desertion? You're so greedy for life and afraid of death, are you still someone who pees while standing?" Looking at Qing Yaojin's anger, Shirtian was scared. His legs went soft and he almost sat on the ground. However, when he thought about it, his life was the most important. He gathered his courage and said tremblingly, "My High Duke, it is not that I refuse, and it is not that I don't want to go. The key is that there is no military equipment, no food, and even no clothes. If you don't believe me, you can look at my guards." They immediately exposed their buttocks. After saying this, he pointed to the guards at the door. Looking at where Shirtian was pointing, he was right. The guards were patched up from head to toe, and half of their thighs were exposed. They were just short of exposing their buttocks. Seeing that Qing Yaojin did not speak, Shirtian quickly continued, "You also saw that our Feng state is so poor that we can't even afford military uniforms. If we go out now, half of our people will be frozen to death before we even go to the battlefield. How can we fight? If we go, we will be sending ourselves to death. You must not take the initiative to start a war. I know what you are saying, but this is the Emperor's intention." Yu Qigong looked at Shirtian and said with a serious face, "Your military equipment will be shipped to Feng State and Qing State in about 5 days. So, you don't have to worry about this. When the time comes, we will send you cannons to help you." Hearing this, Shirtian's face lit up with joy. Really? That's great. He did not doubt Yu Qigong's words because he knew that people like him were true to their words. There was no need to lie to him. Of course, he was not afraid of war. As long as there were supplies, everyone at the border was a warrior. Yu Qigong nodded. "Well, you will help the people in the next few days. If you can't do it, you will build a temporary residence for them. We still have important things to do in Chang'an, so we have to leave now." After saying this, he and Qing Yaojin looked at each other and walked out of the door. Outside the door, the military horses had already been reorganized. Qing Yaojin and Yu Qigong mounted the horses and set off on the way back. The wind and snow blew in their faces, and the coldness pierced every soldier's body. However, they did not stop, because they knew that the Turks were about to invade the Tang dynasty. This was the time for everyone to protect their homeland and make contributions. Chapter 1735. When they returned this time, they had to be ready to sacrifice themselves on the battlefield and die for the Tang dynasty. The soldiers rushed back regardless of the wind and frost on their faces. Finally, they returned to Chang'an, and on the 3rd day, Qing Yaojin and Yu Qigong were not in a hurry. They took off their military uniforms and went straight to the Imperial Palace. In the Imperial study of the Imperial Palace, Li Shimin had placed a stove in front of him. He was concentrating on correcting memorials to the throne. This was something he had to do every day, and it was something he had to do for the people of the world. Hurried footsteps were heard, and the chamberlain came in. "Your Majesty, Duke Lu and Duke Yi are back. They are outside the door and asking for an audience." Hearing this, Li Shimin quickly put down the memorials and looked at the chamberlain. "Send them in." The chamberlain answered and walked out of the imperial study. A moment later, Qing Yaojin and Yu Qigong in military uniforms came in. "Your Majesty." The two of them bowed together. Li Shimin winked at Xiao Gizi beside him. The latter immediately understood and sent all the palace servants out of the hall. He also closed the door himself. "You're finally back. You've made me wait for a long time." Li Shimin quickly got up from the dragon throne and asked, "How's the border?" He had been worried about the border when he was in Chang'an. Now that Qing Yaojin and Yu Qigong had returned, he was relieved. Qing Yaojin looked at Li Shimin and said, "Your Majesty, the border has been settled. The people have moved into the pass. However, Feng Province and Sheng Province don't have enough military supplies. The most important thing is that they don't have winter clothes. Your Majesty, please send some. Also, Li Jing of Yuzhou is ready to send troops to Feng Province and Sheng Province at any time. Li Shimin nodded and said, "Good. With Li Shimin guarding Feng Province and Sheng Province, there shouldn't be any problems. Pass on my order right away. The imperial edict will arrive soon. Gather all the cotton-padded clothes from all the prefectures and send them to Sheng Province, Feng Province, and Yuzhou. Also, announce that all the cloth merchants will help the Tang dynasty overcome this difficult time together. Those who disobey will be punished for treason." The border was one of the most important places of the Tang dynasty. If the border was lost, the Tang dynasty's empire would be threatened. Therefore, it was necessary to distribute the best resources to the soldiers at the border. "Thank you, Your Majesty." Cheng Yaojin and Yu Qigong cupped their fists together. With that, the two of them left the imperial study. Now that the border was in danger, they didn't dare to delay. After the two of them left, Xiao Gizi's voice came from outside the door, saying that Wei Jing wanted to see him. Li Shimin waved his sleeve and summoned Wei Jing. Wei Jing had been in charge of the spies of the Tang dynasty in the Turks during this period of time. It should be because of the Turks. "Greetings, Your Majesty." Wei Jing bowed. "There's no need to be so courteous in the study. What's the matter, my dear subject?" Li Shimin said with a smile. "Your Majesty, I received a report from the spies that there's no movement in the Tuli camp. I don't know what they're doing, but I heard that there's something unusual." "I don't know the details," Wei Jing said seriously. Hearing this, Li Shimin breathed a sigh of relief. Although he didn't know what was going on in the Turks' camp, at least it gave Qiuzi a chance to breathe. Li Shimin smiled. "Good, this news is very beneficial to Qiuzi. Maybe we can turn the situation around." Wei Jing stroked his beard and nodded. "Yes, as long as this news is spread, not only will it affect the morale of the Turks, but it will also improve the morale of the Tang dynasty." Li Shimin looked at Wei Jing and said solemnly, "I'll leave this matter to you, my dear subject." "Rest assured, Your Majesty. I'll do it right away." Wei Jing cupped his hands and left the imperial study. Outside the imperial palace, Cheng Yaojin and Yu Qigong led the soldiers and horses in a hurry. They carried the imperial edict and walked among the major cloth merchants. The cloth merchants had never seen such a scene before. For a moment, they were in a panic. At first, these cloth merchants didn't want to hand over the cotton-padded clothes. After all, these things were their way of making money. Who would be willing to hand them over so easily? But when they heard that it was the emperor's imperial edict, they were so scared that their legs went weak. They all handed over the cotton-padded clothes and cloth with both hands. Then, the cotton-padded clothes were sent to the cloth factory for processing. After processing, Cheng Yaojin sent soldiers and supplies to Feng Province and Yuzhou. After the cotton-padded clothes and supplies were sent, the soldiers at the border were instantly energized, indicating that they could all win the war. With Li Jing, the general, in charge, the soldiers were even more excited. The wind and snow never stopped, as if the war drums were beating for this war. The sky was dark, and the wind began to roar. The soldiers at the border were waiting for the arrival of the Turks. The Turks lived up to their expectations and killed their way to Feng Province. They were like wolves that had been hungry for a long time. They went straight to Feng Province. Wherever they went, not even a blade of grass grew. However, they didn't expect that the Tang dynasty had already prepared for this. They even set up several cannons. This was the knell to welcome them. With roars, half of the Turks were killed before they reached the city gate. Li Jing shouted. The soldiers in the city who were already hungry and thirsty rushed out of the city gate. They cut off the left ear of the Turks because it could be exchanged for military merits. It was also a symbol of their honor, enough to make their descendants proud. Chapter 1736. The fierce battle lasted less than a night. The invading Turkic army was annihilated, leaving only stinking corpses on the battlefield. However, most of these corpses belonged to the Turkic people. The soldiers of the Tang dynasty won the war with an absolute advantage and successfully defended their homeland. This was the proudest thing for a soldier and also the proudest thing for a citizen of the Tang dynasty. The war at the border came to an end, and life at the border returned to peace for the time being. At the same time, in Chang'an and White Deer College, the wind and snow were drifting in the air. Snowflakes the size of a thumb drifted down and filled the entire college. After a while, the entire college seemed to be covered with a layer of white cloth. It was like an otherworldly peach garden that people yearned for. Different from the border, the wind and snow in Chang'an were not so violent. It was more gentle, like a small hand caressing it. The sound of reciting came from the classroom, like a melodious note, lingering for a long time. In a small house not far from the classroom, a few gray-haired old men were sitting around a fire. There were a few teacups next to them, giving them a sage-like temperament. These people were Ouyang Sun, Chu Suiliang, Yu Shernan, and Shueji. Chu Suiliang picked up the teacup next to him and took a sip. "Bo Shi, do you know what Fengzi has been doing recently? Why doesn't he come to the college?" Yu Shernan rolled his eyes at Chu Suiliang. "How would I know? You should ask that kid." "If I could find that kid, would I ask you?" The two old men talked intermittently. At this moment, the sound of footsteps on snow came from outside the door. Creak. Yu Shernan turned around and glanced at him. "So it's Virgo. Come in and warm yourself by the fire." Hearing this, Chengchumo shook off the snow stuck to his feet, opened the door, and walked in. Wei Shuyu and Zhang Sun followed behind him. "Mr. Bo Shi, thank you." After that, Chengchumo found a seat and sat down. The other two also found their own seats. Yu Shernan handed a teacup to Chengchumo. "Chumo, what have you been doing recently? Why haven't you come to the academy for so long?" Chengchumo took the teacup and said tiredly, "We are working on the equipment of the textile factory, especially the power of the unmanned textile machine and the water wheel." "What is this?" Yu Shernan asked subconsciously. "Ask if you don't understand. This is common sense." Wei Shuyu, who was sitting at the side, interjected, "I heard from Fengzi that this unmanned textile wheel uses physical methods to make it realize that it can automatically spin without people. I don't know the specifics." "Then what is this thing connected to the water wheel?" Wei Shuyu was about to speak, but Zhang Sun pulled her out and gave her a look, indicating that he would speak. Then, before she spoke, he said, "Fengzi said that it is to put two hard piles on the bank where the current is very rapid. The upper half of the wheel is above the bank, and the lower half is immersed in the water, so that it can rotate freely. There are bamboo tubes attached diagonally to the spokes of the wheel, and there is a water tank near the water tube on the wheel. When the wheel is stimulated by the rapid current, the wheel will rotate, and the water tube will be filled with water." "Stop, stop, stop." Before Zhang Sun finished speaking, Ouyang Xiao quickly interrupted him. The old man really couldn't stand it. This guy never stopped talking, and he was always talking about things that others couldn't understand. He was even more long-winded than a woman. Ouyang Xiao glanced at the three people. "Old man asked you, you just said that Fengzi. Where is Fengzi? Where is he? Isn't Fengzi at home tending to cotton?" Wei Shuyu was a little confused. "Isn't this something that everyone knows? What do you know?" Chengchumo rolled his eyes at Wei Shuyu. "Recently, Fengzi is not only tending to cotton at home, but also making firearms." "Firearms?" Yu Shernan frowned. "Chumo, how do you know?" Chengchumo smiled and said with a mysterious look, "That day, my father and Fengzi went up the mountain and saw that kid making a lot of weapons. The most important thing is, there is a thing called a gun. My father said that although the sound of that thing is a little loud, its power is not bad. I heard that it can kill a bird without a problem." After hearing this, Yu Shernan's frown deepened, and his eyes almost couldn't be seen. He glanced at Chu Suiliang, Ouyang Xiao, and Shueji and gave them a look. The three immediately understood that he wanted to continue to talk to Chengchumo. "Chumo, besides these things, did Fengzi do anything else recently?" Chu Suiliang forced a smile. "Anything else?" Chengchumo deliberately stroked his beardless chin. "Also, this kid sells cotton-padded clothes and buys dried flowers. I heard that this kid bought dozens of dongs of flowers." "What?" Yu Shernan exclaimed. "He bought dozens of dongs of flowers?" Chengchumo slapped his thigh and echoed, "That's right. Say, this brat not only destroyed all of retired emperor's flowers, he also bought these dried flowers." Isn't he idle? Yu Shinan looked at his two partners and communicated with his eyes. It seemed that Fengzi was led astray by Li Shimin again. Chapter 1737. Otherwise, why would this guy buy so many flowers at once? The three of them made up their minds and stubbornly put the blame on Li Shimin. The poor emperor was blacklisted at this moment. Ouyang Xiu waved his hand at Chengchumo and said impatiently, "Okay, we all know. You can go back to work." Once this guy opened his mouth, he would talk non-stop like a woman. If you didn't interrupt him, he wouldn't finish. Okay then. Chengchumo was a little disappointed, but in the face of the three masters, he had to listen. After that, the three of them walked out of the room resentfully. After the three of them left, Yu Shinan waved his hand and called his two companions in front of him. He said earnestly, "Fengzi can't go on like this. Brothers, think of a way." Chu Suiliang frowned and said, "That's right. Fengzi's talent and learning must be in the literary world and Confucianism to develop a better future. If he continues to follow the emperor, sooner or later, something will happen." In their view, Zhang Feng was like a piece of unpolished jade. Only in the field of literature could he become a perfect and flawless piece of jade. The imperial court was like a filthy place. It would only let Zhang Feng, this piece of unpolished jade, be contaminated with secular air, and it would be difficult for him to become a talent. Ouyang Xiu nodded and said, "You're right. None of those guys in the imperial court are good. Let's think of a way to bring Fengzi back." Xueji stroked his beard and seemed to have thought of something. "Didn't Fengzi say that he wanted to organize a basketball game? Let's say that we help him organize a basketball game. He will definitely be happy." Ouyang Xiu slapped his thigh. "Yes, Fengzi has been wanting to organize this basketball game for a long time. With us, there will be no problem. Okay, let's not delay. Let's go find Fengzi immediately." Yu Shinan suddenly stood up and couldn't wait. Chu Suiliang also nodded in agreement. In this way, the four of them hit it off and prepared to find Zhang Feng for an ideological lesson. At the gate of Zhang Mansion. At this moment, he was surrounded by a group of people. Looking from afar, it was as if there was no end in sight. Although there were many people, it was not messy. Instead, it was very orderly. They formed a long, winding line that connected to Zhang Mansion. Almost all of these people were holding a parcel in their hands. Some of them even had 2 or 3 parcels. From the gaps of these parcels, it could be seen that they were all filled with white paper. Housekeeper Du Ziding was standing at the entrance of Zhang Mansion. He was holding an account book in one hand and a brush in the other. He seemed to be recording something. "One by one, don't rush. Xiao Wang, give me the money." Du Ziding lowered her head and took notes in her notebook. She was still yelling. At this moment, a carriage slowly drove over. The people in the queue hurriedly made way for him, because they knew that a person who could sit in a carriage was not an existence they could provoke. The carriage stopped at the entrance of the Zhang Mansion. For sage-like old men alighted from the carriage one after another. It was Yu Shinan, Chu Suiliang, Ouyang Xiu, and Xueji who had come to look for Zhang Feng. "So it's you teachers. Quick, please come in." Du Ziding quickly put down the account book and called out to the 4 people. "Who are these people behind you?" Yu Shinan turned around and pointed at the people selling white paper. "These are all selling white paper for master," Du Ziding said with a smile. Yu Shinan was slightly startled. He had seen them when he was sitting in the carriage just now, but he did not know what they were doing. Now that he heard the housekeeper say it, it was a little amazing. There were so many people selling white paper that the queue stretched out of the alley. Would this brat be able to finish buying so many white stacks? The same question appeared in the minds of the other 3 people. They looked at the people in the queue in surprise. Usually, when there were many people, it was easy to cause chaos. However, these people were too orderly. There were so many people, yet there was no chaos? Was it a little abnormal? "Housekeeper, why are these people in the queue so orderly?" Ouyang Xiu could not help but ask. Du Ziding raised his head. "Our master said that if there is chaos, whoever takes the lead will not take the white paper. This way, no one will dare to cause trouble." Ouyang Xiu stroked his beard and nodded secretly. He could not help praising this kid in his heart. Most of these people were poor people. With a way to make money, they naturally did not dare to mess around. After chatting for a while, Du Ziding led the 4 people to Zhang Mansion. As soon as they entered the door, the 4 people were shocked by the scene in front of them. White paper, the whole garden was filled with white paper. There was a platform in the middle of the courtyard. Several servants were holding an unknown object in their hands and playing on it. They did not know what they were doing. The corridor connecting the atrium seemed to have become an assembly line for rolling cotton. Several maids were squatting on the ground and picking the seeds in the white paper with their hands. After picking, the maids handed the white paper to the servants in the courtyard. They began to play on the platform. The whole process was smooth and coordinated. Everyone was agile and pleasing to the eye. However, the 4 old man's sons were a little confused. Although they knew about the white paper and knew that Zhang Feng was making cotton-padded clothes, they did not know the process of making cotton-padded clothes. "Housekeeper, this is..." Yu Shernan pointed to the servant who was playing with cotton and asked. Chapter 1738. Teacher, I'm flicking cotton. I'm flicking the cotton until it's softer so that it's easier to use. Du Ziding replied with a smile. Yu Shernan shook his head. Anyway, he didn't understand. The other 3 were also dumbfounded. After chatting for a while, Du Ziding led the 4 of them through the corridor. They came to the south courtyard. There were a few women sitting in the courtyard with a machine in front of them. They were holding coarse cloth in their hands and were processing it. There were also a few women sewing the processed cloth next to them. They already had the first model of cotton-padded clothes. Is this also the process of making cotton-padded clothes? Yu Shernan pointed at the cotton-padded clothes model and asked in confusion. These have the shape. As long as you fill it with white cotton, it'll be cotton-padded clothes. Du Ziding smiled. What a wonderful idea. Ouyang Xiao stroked his beard and couldn't help but praise. Butler, are there any cotton-padded clothes? Let me see. Yu Shernan asked curiously. Looking at the cotton-padded clothes being processed, his heart was itching. Speaking of this, the 4 of them looked at Du Ziding together. Of course, the cotton-padded clothes are being made in the north courtyard. Old Master is also there. Du Ziding smiled. Okay, quickly bring Old Man there. Yu Shernan couldn't wait. Then, Du Ziding led them through the corridor and came to the north courtyard. As soon as they entered the courtyard, they saw a crowded scene. The courtyard was full of people. A dozen women were sitting on stools, holding the first model of cotton-padded clothes in their arms and stuffing cotton into it. After stuffing it, they handed the clothes to the women beside them. These women were sewing the cotton-padded clothes together. Zhang Feng was standing at the side, checking and giving a few pointers from time to time. These women were very fast. After a few turns, a cotton-padded clothes were done. Zhang Feng picked up the cotton-padded clothes and looked at them. After confirming that there was no problem, he put them aside. Fengzi, Yu Shernan waved at Zhang Feng. There was no other way. The entrance was already filled with people. How could these few old men squeeze in? Hearing someone call out to him, Zhang Feng turned around abruptly, his face beaming with joy. Mr. Bosher, why are you guys here? After that, Zhang Feng waved his hand at the door. Make way for these gentlemen. As soon as he finished speaking, the women at the door glanced at Yu Shernan and the others before resentfully opening up a path. They were chatting happily with the master just now, and the master even said that he would give them a raise. She didn't know what these old men were doing, disturbing her good time. After the crowd cleared the way, Zhang Feng hurriedly greeted them. Gentlemen, please come in. You came at the right time today. I just made some new cotton-padded clothes. Come and take a look. Yu Shernan stroked his beard and strode forward with the other 3 following closely behind. This is my newly made cotton-padded jacket and quilt. Come and take a look. Zhang Feng pointed at the finished cotton-padded jacket and introduced it to them. Touching the neatly arranged cotton-padded clothes and quilts, Yu Shernan was overjoyed. How nice would it be if everyone in the academy could have a share of these things? Especially the quilt, it was incomparably soft to the touch. If they covered their bodies with it, they wouldn't be afraid of freezing their feet at night. Not only him but the other 3 also had the same idea. They stepped forward and touched the jacket and quilt, wishing that they could put their hands in it to warm up. Zhang Feng saw the joy on their faces and smiled. It's rare for the four of you to come together today. I'll give one to each of you. After that, he picked up the jacket and handed it to the four of them. You brat. Yu Shernan took the jacket and looked at it carefully, his face full of joy. Since you're so generous, we won't stand on ceremony. Chu Suiliang accepted the jacket graciously. At this time, Ouyang Xiu coughed softly. Everyone suddenly realized that they were looking for Zhang Feng to return to the academy. How could this brat pull them aside with just a few words? Fengzi, get ready to return to the academy with us. Shueji put down the jacket in his hand and pretended to be angry. That's right, Fengzi. How long has it been since you went to the academy? Look at how wild you have become. Ouyang Xiu also spoke from the side. Everyone spoke in a few words, spitting saliva everywhere. Just as Zhang Feng was about to speak, there was a sound of footsteps outside the door. After a while, Li Shimin walked in with Cheng Yaojin, Wei Jing and the others. Seeing the scene in front of him, Li Shimin was slightly surprised. He didn't expect the four of them to be here too. He stepped forward and smiled. So the four of you are here too. May I know why you're looking for Fengzi? Yu Shernan frowned slightly and replied faintly, we're here to ask Fengzi to return to the academy. He didn't have a good impression of the emperor in front of him. If it weren't for him, would Fengzi have been fooling around all day? Of course, the other three had the same opinion. They all thought that Fengzi was influenced by Li Shimin. Why are you in such a hurry? Li Shimin didn't care. He glanced at the cotton-padded jacket in the courtyard. Isn't he dealing with the cotton-padded jacket now? It's mainly because of the basketball competition. Previously, Fengzi promised that the champion would get a chance to enter the academy for free. Now many people are asking when the competition will be held. After all, this promise is very tempting. Shueji stroked his beard and said faintly. Chapter 1739. Hearing this, Li Shimin frowned slightly. If Fengzi left, what about the cotton-padded clothes? He couldn't handle it alone. No, he had to listen to Fengzi. Fengzi, what do you think about this? Li Shimin looked at Zhang Feng and asked seriously. Personally, he didn't want Zhang Feng to go to the academy, at least not now. Because he still had a lot of things to deal with. If he really left, who would give him ideas? The basketball game is my previous promise. This thing has to be done. Just now, Sir said that many people have begun to ask. It's not appropriate to not do it. Lao Li, I'll leave the cotton-padded clothes to you for the time being. Everyone in the yard knows how to do it. You don't have to worry about anything. Zhang Feng glanced at the crowd and said, indeed, this was the time to pay attention to promises. For a promise, some people would even risk their lives. If he said he didn't do it now, he wouldn't be able to establish himself in the future. Everyone's spittle could drown him. This had nothing to do with status. After all, gossip was a fearful thing. After hearing Zhang Feng's words, Li Shimin didn't say anything. He also understood the reason. Although he was reluctant to leave Zhang Feng, it seemed that this basketball game had to be done. Zhang Feng waved to Du Ziding and said, Old Du, go and tell Jingshu and Yu Yao to pack up and get ready to go to the academy with me. Li Shimin and the others looked at each other, but didn't know what to say. Yu Shernan was full of joy. He thought that this guy was finally going to go to the academy with him. This time, he couldn't let him go down the mountain easily. After a while, Jingshu and Zhang Yuyao packed up their luggage. Zhang Feng and Li Shimin said goodbye to each other and went out of the mansion with Yu Shernan and the others. Only the disappointed crowd was left behind. Although Zhang Feng said that there was no problem with the cotton-padded clothes, Li Shimin still had a headache. After all, this was his first time handling this matter, so he wasn't very clear about it. Seeing Li Shimin's doubts, Zhang Sun Wuji smiled and said, actually, this is an opportunity. Although Feng Zi left, the marketing model he mentioned before can still be used. Speak clearly, Li Shimin asked. Everyone looked at Zhang Sun Wuji in unison. Zhang Xian chuckled. As long as we can find the merchants of the various prefectures who sell silk and cloth, we'll be able to expand this industry and even monopolize it. Actually, I've already taken a look at it. The process isn't too complicated. The difficult part lies in flicking the cotton. The servants of the Zhang residence have already grasped all of this. That's right. As long as we work with the merchants, it won't be difficult at all. Wei Zheng chimed in from the side. They had seen the entire process of making the cotton-padded clothes and quilts when they had just entered the Zhang residence. It wasn't very difficult. Li Shimin secretly nodded. Now that he had the technology to make cotton-padded clothes in his hands, there was nothing to worry about. As long as he contacted the merchants and guaranteed the cloth and white sheets, everything wouldn't be a problem. Thinking of this, his mood immediately improved. Let's go back to the residence. In the imperial study, Li Shimin sat upright on the dragon throne with a cigarette in his hand. He took a puff from time to time and enjoyed it very much. The matter of the cotton-padded clothes had been resolved. However, Zhang Feng's proposal to hold a basketball game just now aroused his thoughts again. He had to find a way to get involved in such a good thing. These guys in the palace lived in luxury every day. He had to let them go out and broaden their horizons. He looked at everyone and said, "What do you think? Shouldn't we support the basketball game that Feng Zi is holding this time?" Wei Jing nodded and said, "Your Majesty, not only should we support Feng Zi's basketball game, but we should also send people to participate in it." Li Shimin nodded. Wei Zheng's words happened to hit the nail on the head. He smiled and said, "I'm going to let the women in the palace lead a team of women to participate in Feng Zi's basketball game. What do you think?" "Your Majesty's intention is really good. The people in the palace and outside the palace can share entertainment together. It's enough to show your Majesty's love for the people." Zhang Sun Wuji smiled. These words made Li Shimin very happy. After all, everyone was willing to listen to good words. "Your Majesty, I suggest that this matter can be discussed in the morning court tomorrow. Maybe those high-ranking officials will let their children participate. After all, these young masters are all playboys in Chang. They won't let go of such an opportunity." Wei Jing cupped his hands and said, "My beloved, you're right." Li Shimin nodded and took a deep breath of the cigarette. "Those playboys are also considered the tyrants in Chang. It's time to see the world." Everyone discussed for a while and then dispersed. In the morning court the next day, the officials came to the main hall early, holding white jade tablets and looking solemn. Li Shimin walked out of the side hall, waved his sleeves, and sat on the dragon throne. "Greetings, Your Majesty." The officials bowed in unison. Li Shimin waved his hand and motioned for the officials to rise. "Thank you, Your Majesty." The officials rose. "My beloved officials, I've received news that the Dean of White Deer College, Zhang Feng, is going to organize a basketball game. The winner will be qualified to study in White Deer College. Are you interested?" As soon as Li Shimin finished speaking, the main hall immediately became lively. White Deer College is finally going to organize a basketball game. Old man has been waiting for this opportunity for a long time. This time, I must let my son participate. The ranking isn't important. The most important thing is to participate. Chapter 1740. I want my son to go too. I want to bring my family's servants. This is a rare opportunity. Everyone rubbed their fists and palms, looking eager to give it a try. It was as if they were the ones participating in the basketball competition. Seeing this, Li Shimin was delighted. The enthusiasm of the officials was a clear indication of the importance of this competition. Seeing the endless noise in the imperial court, Xiao Gizi hurriedly shouted in a hoarse voice, "Everyone be quiet." As soon as he finished speaking, the officials stopped arguing and returned to their seats. At this moment, the dean of the Imperial College, Lu Hongwen, stepped forward and cupped his hands. "Your Majesty, I would like to lead the students of the Imperial College to participate in the competition. Your Majesty, please allow it." Before Li Shimin could reply, the Hongwen Guan's dean, Ouyang Kai, also stepped forward. He cupped his hands and said, "Your Majesty, I would like to lead the students of the Hongwen Guan to participate in the competition. Please allow it." "Since you have such intentions, I will naturally allow it." Li Shimin waved his hand and immediately agreed. Seeing that everyone was so enthusiastic, he was overjoyed. How would he dare to reject? When Cheng Yaojin and Yu Qigong saw this, they exchanged a look. Without saying anything, the two of them immediately understood each other. They stepped forward one after another and cupped their hands. Your Majesty, I would like to lead the soldiers to participate in the competition. Please allow it. Your Majesty, I would like to as well. Please allow it. Following the lead of Qing Yaojin and Yu Qigong, the generals standing at the side couldn't help but step forward to ask for permission. Your Majesty, I would like to lead my family to participate in the competition. Your Majesty, I would like to as well. Actually, when Li Shimin said this, they already wanted to step forward. However, he beat them to it. Now that there were two big shots stepping forward, they naturally couldn't back down. Basketball could be said to be a national sport. Not only could it strengthen one's body, but most importantly, after the students of White Deer Academy graduated, they would be able to take Zhang Feng's documents and become officials in the imperial court or take up a position in the Ministry of Works. This was a huge temptation for generals who relied on their military exploits to rise to the top. Although they couldn't participate, they still had children at home. It was great to give their children a chance. Of course, the generals weren't the only ones who had such thoughts. The civil officials also wanted to find a way out for their descendants. After all, White Deer College was approved by His Majesty. Principal Zhang Feng's reputation was even more widespread. He was known as a prodigy, so there was no mistake in participating. Your Majesty, please allow me to participate in the basketball match. Your Majesty, this subject agrees. His Highness's officials seemed to be united as they all asked for orders. Li Shimin had a headache. He didn't expect there to be so many officials. The reason why he had said it earlier was so that the officials would respond and step forward to represent him. He didn't expect so many officials to appear at once. Almost all of them were asking for orders. Other than a few stubborn old people, the main hall was filled with officials asking for orders. He felt like he was riding a tiger and couldn't get off. However, this matter was beneficial to the country and the people. No matter what, he had to set an example. So be it if there were more people. He believed that the kid could handle it. He made up his mind, but his expression was still calm. I understand what all of you are saying. I approve. Thank you, Your Majesty. The officials bowed. After the court session, the officials hurried back to prepare for the basketball match. The military officials rushed to the barracks to select elite soldiers for training. The civil officials started to select servants from their families to accompany the young master. Even the imperial palace began to train. Li Shimin transferred many strong palace maids, and the imperial bodyguards circled out a large area in the imperial palace to begin training. On the other hand, the main venue, White Deer College, wasn't idle either. Ever since Zhang Feng returned, he started to prepare for the basketball match. The people from the college also knew the importance of this basketball match. They took the initiative to bring everyone to the court to play. They were determined to win first place. Just like that, the basketball match's reputation spread like wildfire. Now, the streets of Chang'an were filled with news about the basketball match. After a few days of preparation, the basketball match was about to start. White Deer College basketball court. The spectator seats were filled with people. Not only were there rich people, there were also many poor people. They all heard the news and came to watch. They couldn't miss such a grand event. There were also some high officials' children in the front row. Many of them didn't have the qualifications to participate and could only watch. There were also children of the royal family, such as Li Ji and Li Quan. They were still young and could only raise their heads to look at everything in front of them. Beside them was a big shot like Li Yuan. When he heard about the basketball match, he was the first to want to come. Looking back at the court, Zhang Feng stood in the middle of the court. This time, he wasn't participating. He was the referee. Because these people didn't know much about basketball, they needed him to guide them. Zhang Feng gestured to the people on the court, indicating that they were starting to warm up. The first match was between Qing Yaojin's team and the Grand Scribe's team. When they drew Qing Yaojin's team, the Grand Scribe was about to cry. Who didn't know that Qing Yaojin was a famous scoundrel? Even if he lost, he could still say that he won. Moreover, he had the identity of a duke. Who dared to offend him? Chapter 1741. After the court session, all the officials seemed to have something on their minds. They didn't talk to each other and hurriedly walked out of the palace gates. Even the few old officials who usually needed the help of servants to attend court were in high spirits, afraid that they would fall behind. Not to mention the generals, each one of them ran faster than the other. They took large strides and hurried back home. Even the officials who usually liked to drink wine didn't go to the restaurant. This was because they had something important on their minds, which was to gather people for training and prepare for the competition. Originally, this kind of competition wasn't worth the officials' praise. However, Zhang Feng had promised that as long as they won first place, they would be able to enter the academy for free. That was White Deer College. As long as they studied for 3 years, they would be able to enter the imperial court as an official with Zhang Feng's documents. They could even enter the Ministry of Works. The 6 ministries weren't easy to enter. Even if you were the son of a high-ranking official or an aristocratic family, you wouldn't be able to enter the Ministry of Works if you didn't have some ability. Now, Zhang Feng had announced that as long as they won the competition, they would be able to enter the academy. To these hedonistic sons of high-ranking officials, this was a chance to reach the heavens in a single bound. Once the news reached the academy and the heavens heard it, just thinking about it was enough. More importantly, His Majesty the Emperor had announced that he supported the officials' participation. This was a shot in the arm for everyone. Even if they couldn't win first place, they had to perform well in front of His Majesty. Furthermore, there was such a tempting reward for winning first place. It would be strange if they didn't go crazy. However, the civil officials were still all right. They only lifted their skirts and ran towards the palace gates. The generals were a little unsightly. They ran as fast as they could, not caring if there was anyone in front of them. Some of them even lost their shoes. Especially Qing Yaojin, he kicked a few civil officials over just for 1 point. He wanted to go home and prepare for training. He wanted to be 1 step ahead of others. There was no other way. His hooligan character had already been carved into his bones. No one dared to stop him. This was Lu Guogong. Who the hell dared to provoke him? He snatched the reins from a palace servant and mounted his horse. Giddy up! With a loud shout, he galloped towards the Qing residence. It was a pity that Qing Yaojin turned a deaf ear to the Qing mansion servant's shouts. He was only thinking about basketball. Along the way, he rampaged. Many vendors were thrown to the ground by old Cheng. They were about to stand up and scold him, but when they took a closer look, they realized that he was King Demon King. Who would dare to be rash? They obediently shut their mouths. However, everyone still didn't let go of old Cheng in their hearts. They called him AB*****, AB*****, and other unpleasant words. When everyone cleaned up the stall again, they saw the silver on the ground. They put on a smile again and stopped cursing in their hearts. After rushing all the way, old Cheng finally arrived at the Qing mansion. He jumped off his horse like a carp. Cheng Er, where the hell did you go? Hurry up and get Lao Tzu out. Old Cheng's family had a bunch of illiterates who couldn't read a single word. Therefore, for the sake of convenience, he named his servants Cheng Yi, Cheng Er, and so on. This was also one of the reasons why he was usually a laughing stock. There was no other way. When he was young, he didn't have the money to study. Sai, master, I'm here. Cheng Er put down what he was doing and quickly went up to him. Why wasn't Cheng Yi here? That guy was still eating old Cheng's dust. Old Cheng walked in from the mansion door in a hurry. He glanced at Cheng Er and hurriedly said, "Hurry up and gather all the servants and maids in the mansion for Lao Tzu. Lao Tzu has something to say." Cheng Er was stunned. Master usually didn't care about family matters because he always said that men should lead troops to war and that women should be in charge of family matters. Why did he change today? He scratched his head and was about to ask when suddenly, he felt a sharp pain in his butt. Immediately after, old Cheng's curses came one after another. "Hurry up, Lao Tzu doesn't have time to wait for you." Cheng Er rubbed his butt aggrievedly and hurriedly ran away. Not long after Cheng Er left, a rough female voice came from the inner mansion. "Old Cheng, why are you making a ruckus in the courtyard? Did I not let you eat your fill?" The person who spoke was Qing Yaojin's wife. She usually had a carefree personality and knew some martial arts. She was known as a tyrant in the Qing family and no one dared to provoke her, especially old Cheng. He was as obedient as a cat in front of her. Madam, you came just in time. I have good news for you. Feng Zi is going to hold a basketball game soon. I'm going to bring the servants to participate. Cheng Yaojin looked at Madam Cheng and hurriedly went up to her. Of course, he had to share happy things with others. Of course, this person was his wife. What? Feng Zi is going to hold a basketball game? As expected, it's great news. Madam Cheng's eyebrows were knitted together. Although she had never seen Zhang Feng before, his name had long spread throughout Chang. She had heard so much about him that her ears were sore. Moreover, he was on good terms with her husband. Naturally, she was happy. That's right, madam. This time, the competition will be held in the White Deer Institute. Not only that, even the emperor supports it. All the officials will be participating. Who do you think I, Old Cheng, am? Naturally, I can't lose to Old Black. Old Cheng had a smile on his face. It was completely different from his arrogant appearance outside. Chapter 1742. You still know that you can't be outdone. Look at what you're like outside. You idle around every day. Now that you have something to do, it's not bad. Madame Cheng snorted softly and crossed her arms in front of her chest. Actually, when she heard about the basketball game, she really hoped that Old Cheng would participate. Firstly, it would give this guy something to do so that he wouldn't idle around all day. Secondly, it would make the Cheng family's reputation famous again. Na Cheng thought that this guy would volunteer. This was a good thing. Madam, look at what you're saying. How could I idle around? Old Cheng handed the tea delivered by the maidservant to his madam and smiled. Do you know that yourself? Madam Cheng didn't take the tea. She just glanced at Old Cheng and turned to walk into the inner courtyard. As she spoke, a voice sounded, I hope you won't embarrass your Cheng family this time. As soon as she finished speaking, Madam Cheng disappeared. Madam, you must be joking. I'll definitely get first place. Old Cheng waved his hand and promised. After saying that, Old Cheng leaned against the door and took a look. After making sure that she had left, he heaved a sigh of relief. A moment later, Chang'an led all the servants and maidservants to the front yard. There were 20 servants and 15 maidservants. There were a total of 35 people. Master, the servants and maidservants have all been brought here. Chang'an endured the sharp pain in his butt and bowed. Old Cheng tidied up the resentment from being bullied by his madam and nodded at Chang'an. With his hands behind his back, he walked in front of everyone and scanned them one by one. Many of the servants were soldiers who had come down from the battlefield. They had followed him before and could be considered to have some friendship. The maidservants were hired. You and you come out. Old Cheng reached out and pointed at a few servants, indicating for them to step out. The few people who were pointed at were confused, but in order to avoid injury, they still stood out. They were all the strongest in the Cheng family. Such people had good physical fitness and would be good at playing basketball. Even if they didn't know how to play, he could teach them himself. These problems didn't exist. Leave behind 3 maidservants who are in good health. The rest of you are dismissed. Go do whatever you need to do. Old Cheng waved his hand at everyone and dismissed them. After everyone was dismissed, Old Cheng looked at the few people left behind and smiled. You all know basketball, right? Who knows how to play? As soon as he finished speaking, everyone's face lit up. It turned out that Old Master had kept them here for basketball. They used to be soldiers. Although they were now servants in the Cheng mansion, they would still do some activities. Previously, when he heard that basketball was released, all of them left the Cheng mansion and went to play basketball without eating. They could be considered experts. If they didn't know how to play basketball, they would be mocked. Master, I can play basketball, and I can shoot 3-pointers. Come on, have you ever made a 3-point shot like that? Master, I can do it too. 1 against 2 is no problem. Everyone was talking at once, and Cheng Yaojin felt like his head was about to explode. Shut up, Lao Tzu. Old Cheng shouted, and everyone immediately stopped talking. Then, Old Cheng glanced at everyone. I don't care if you knew how to play Lao Tzu in the past, but you have to know how to play now. Now, White Deer College is going to hold a basketball game. You will participate with Lao Tzu. From today onwards, everyone is only allowed to sleep for 6 hours a day. You have to train the rest of the time. Can you do it? When everyone first heard that Old Ching was going to hold a basketball game at White Deer College, they almost shouted because they all knew what kind of existence White Deer College was. Although they had never been there, they had heard of it. It was a signboard that the emperor had personally appointed. If they played a game there, wouldn't they be full of imperial aura? They would even have the right to brag in the future. However, after hearing the last part, everyone's excitement was extinguished by Old Ching. They were only allowed to sleep for 6 hours a day. Damn it, even the military camp wasn't so strict. However, when they thought about being able to play basketball at White Deer College, everyone felt relieved. Their eyes were red as they shouted in unison. We can do it. We'll get first place. We'll get first place, we'll get first place. Old Ching glanced at everyone and couldn't help but nod. These guys really didn't disappoint him. Then why are you still staying here? Hurry up and go train. The maidservants, prepare tea. Old Ching glared at everyone and shouted. There was nothing he could do. If he spoke to these guys properly, they wouldn't listen. Yes, master. Everyone responded one after another and dispersed. There was basketball in the Ching residence. Old Ching would play a little when he had nothing to do, and the servants could also play. Looking at the servants training, Old Ching's hands also itched, and he subconsciously joined in. Of course, Old Ching wasn't the only one training. Yu Qigong wasn't willing to fall behind. After he returned home, he immediately went to the military camp. Since they were going to play basketball, they naturally had to choose the strongest people, and these people were in the military camp. Yu Qigong looked at the rows of people in military uniforms in front of him and shouted, "Let me tell everyone a piece of good news. White Deer College is preparing to hold a basketball game." Halfway through his sentence, everyone's expressions changed from solemn to pleasant surprise. Chapter 1743. They were soldiers and rarely had any entertainment activities. Basically, the few of them would get together to brag and talk about which family's young ladies were pretty. Ever since basketball came into existence, their daily training became more fun. Playing basketball in 2s and 3s with their friends and getting other teammates to join them. These days were really enjoyable. Today, the general said that White Deer College was going to hold a basketball competition. Could it be that they were going to be part of it? Everyone widened their eyes and looked at Yu Qigong with hope. However, they didn't dare to speak. There were rules in the military camp. They couldn't interrupt when their commanding officer was speaking. Otherwise, they would be beaten. They didn't dare to offend him. Looking at everyone's passionate eyes, Yu Qigong waved his hand and signaled for everyone to calm down. Then he said, "Everyone might have guessed it. During the morning court session today, His Majesty allowed you to participate in the competition. Now, everyone should prepare for training. I will pick out the most outstanding soldiers to participate in the basketball competition." Just as he finished speaking, all the soldiers couldn't hold back their excitement and roared, "Long live His Majesty! I can go to White Deer College. I want to participate in the basketball competition. I want to win first place." Although they were usually in the military camp, they didn't block off the news. In fact, they were very well informed. The news that they could enter White Deer College as long as they won first place in the basketball competition had already spread throughout the military camp. They deeply understood what this meant. If they played well, they might be able to reach the heavens in a single step. Of course, this didn't refer to these soldiers, but to their descendants. They were all soldiers and were destined to be in the military camp for the rest of their lives. However, their descendants were different. If they won the competition, they would have the opportunity to send their family members to White Deer College. For poor families like them, this was undoubtedly a heaven-sent opportunity. They definitely couldn't let it go. Everyone pumped their fists and cheered as they made various decisions in their hearts. Seeing everyone's enthusiasm, Yu Qigong felt a little more confident. He thought to himself, Lao Tzu is definitely going to get first place. Who can compete with Lao Tzu's soldiers? "Soldiers, listen to my orders," Yu Qigong roared. Just as he finished speaking, everyone immediately stopped talking and stood in place. They knew that the general was about to give his orders. Training was about to begin, and then he would be able to participate in the basketball match. Their faces were brimming with excitement, but their bodies were as straight as poles. Yu Qigong looked around and shouted, "Everyone listen to my orders. Leave the soldiers on sentry duty behind. The rest of you will split up and go train immediately." Dismissed. "Oh, he went for training. Take first place." Everyone immediately cheered and walked to the basketball court in twos and threes with their arms around each other's shoulders. In order to provide more entertainment for the soldiers, a basketball court was built in a designated area in the military camp. Yu Qigong looked at everyone's backs and became even more determined to be the champion. Even if he couldn't get anything for himself, he definitely couldn't let his brothers who had gone through thick and thin with him go to waste. These people were all men who had sacrificed their lives for the Tang dynasty. He must let these brothers stand out for once. At the same time, the Imperial College also began its preparation phase. Dean Lu Hongwen was gathering the students for a lecture. With his hands behind his back, he glanced at the students in front of him. "Ahem, I've gathered everyone here today because Old Man has something to announce." All the students frowned and looked at Lu Hongwen in confusion. They knew that this guy was a stubborn old man. He usually liked to talk nonsense. For him to gather everyone here today, it definitely wasn't anything good. If he didn't want to increase the number of classes, then he wanted them to memorize the 4 books and 5 classics. What was he up to today? Although everyone had resentment in their hearts, they still had a trace of respect for Lu Hongwen. None of them dared to utter a single word. After all, Lu Hongwen was the dean and a famous scholar. Otherwise, how could he be regarded so highly by the emperor? During the morning assembly today, His Majesty announced that White Deer College will be holding a basketball match in the next few days. After Old Man's pleading, His Majesty has agreed for Imperial College to participate. Lu Hongwen stroked his beard with his right hand. There was a hint of pride on his face. It was as if he had painstakingly begged for a place in the competition. As soon as he finished speaking, a hint of surprise flashed across the student's eyes. However, this surprise disappeared in an instant. Then, everyone was stunned and looked at Lu Hongwen in confusion. The surprise was that they could participate in the basketball match. One had to know that they were usually trapped in the Imperial College and basically had no freedom. Although they were the children of high-ranking officials, once they entered Imperial College, they had to obediently bow their heads and listen to the teacher's instructions. Usually, they were even stricter. They had to behave properly and sit properly. Now that they finally had a chance to play basketball, they could only play it for 2 hours a day. This kind of life had long driven them crazy. They couldn't wait to leave this place. Today, the dean actually said that he was going to hold a basketball match. This made everyone ecstatic, because once it was held, they could leave Imperial College and see the outside world. At the same time, they couldn't believe it. Chapter 1744. They couldn't believe that this stubborn old man would plead with the emperor to let them participate in the basketball competition. The dean and the others wanted to keep them in the Imperial College so that they could study 24 hours a day and eat, drink, and defecate. Why did he change today? Was it because he was provoked by the emperor? Or was this the prelude to the storm? The students looked at each other in confusion, but no one dared to ask. Lu Hongwen saw the doubt in their eyes and asked, "What's wrong with you all? Shouldn't you be happy to hear this?" Happy? Everyone smiled bitterly. Who the hell knows if you have a backup plan? Once we're happy, we'll get a beating and say that we're ignorant and incompetent. That's too much of a loss. We're not that stupid. However, seeing how confident the dean was, it didn't seem fake. Finally, a student mustered up his courage and asked timidly, "Dean, is what you said true?" Hearing this, Lu Hongwen was enraged. "So you all thought that what I said was fake? This bunch of bastards." Although he was angry, he couldn't express it. He was still the dean of the Imperial College. He took a deep breath and his face darkened. "It's true. White Deer College will be preparing for the competition in a few days. Go and prepare for your training." With that, Lu Hongwen snorted and turned to walk into the inner hall. Seeing the dean walk away, everyone finally reacted. So there was really a basketball competition and they were going to be part of it. This was simply a dream for them who had been training hard in the Imperial College. Like runaway horses, they galloped toward the outer court, cheering. Get first place. Oh. They were the children of high officials. Although they didn't have to worry about food and clothing, who didn't want to become an official? Unfortunately, most of the titles couldn't be inherited. Many of them had to rely on their own hard work to get a chance. Today, as long as they got first place in the White Deer College competition, it was equivalent to getting the right to become an official. With the support of their parents, what was there to worry about? Everyone was cheering and jumping in the courtyard. They were hitting the basketball, not caring about their image at all. What he didn't know was that Lu Hongwen hadn't gone far. He leaned against the door and sighed. This is outrageous. What a disgrace to the educated. He did not object to the scholars playing basketball, but these fellows did not even care about etiquette. They were rolling around in the courtyard, and some of them were even topless. How could a Confucian scholar like him not be angry? Not only had the Imperial College started their training, but Hongwenguan, which was on the same level as the Imperial College, had also started their intensive preparations. Hongwenguan was a bit different from the Imperial College. This was a place that was in charge of correcting maps and records. Therefore, most of the deacons here were members of the royal family. Each of them had an extraordinary status. If they weren't the nephews of the concubines, then they were the nephews of the nobles. These people were usually arrogant because they were pampered. They were famous tyrants in Chang'an city. However, due to Ouyang Kai's reputation and status in the imperial court, these people knew their place in Hongwenguan. However, once they were out of Hongwenguan, they were existences that no one dared to interfere with, except for people like Qing Yaojin. Today, these people with extraordinary status were all gathered together by Ouyang Kai. Everyone, during the imperial court today, His Majesty revealed that White Deer College will be holding a basketball competition soon. Old Man made a request to His Majesty, and His Majesty decreed that Old Man would be leading the people of Hongwenguan to participate in White Deer College's basketball competition. As soon as he said that, it immediately caused an uproar. What? White Deer College is holding a basketball competition. I've been waiting for this competition for years. It's finally starting. Everyone cheered in surprise. Logically speaking, they were all members of the royal family. They did not lack official positions or money. As long as they did not court death, they would be able to eat as long as Li Shimin was able to eat. Why were they still looking forward to the basketball competition? There was only one thing. They wanted to make a name for themselves in the competition. White Deer College was personally named by Li Shimin. It was different from other places. The entire college was tainted with the aura of royalty. As long as they won first place in this competition, they would definitely attract the attention of the whole world. More importantly, they would also attract the attention of Li Shimin. At that time, their family's reputation would be known. Li Shimin would definitely reward them well. Their official positions would also be low. When they thought of this, they could not suppress the excitement in their hearts. Hallmaster, when do we start training? Yes, Hallmaster. I can't wait. Everyone was talking at once. These people were all members of the royal family. Yang Kai could not say much. He waved his hand and said, "Go train now." Everyone cheered and ran to the courtyard. They were determined to win this competition. Not for anything else, but because of their status, who would dare to steal their ball on the court? Of course, this was only what they thought. If they were to meet a troublemaker like Qing Yaojin, they would be rolling on the court. As everyone prepared meticulously, the news spread like wildfire. Soon, it reached the streets of Chang'an. Chapter 1745. As everyone knew, Chang'an was the most prosperous place in the Tang dynasty. The moment the news of the basketball game spread, the entire Chang'an was like boiling water. Everyone was talking about the basketball game. The Langjun, who usually carried goods, was not carrying anything today. The vendors were also not shouting. Instead, they were sitting in groups of 2s and 3s, as if they were discussing something important. Have you heard that White Deer College is holding a basketball game? The one who spoke was Zhu Zi, a peddler who sold fermented glutinous rice. He usually went to the basketball court in Tonghuifang to sell fermented glutinous rice. That was where the rich and powerful played. He would occasionally hear a few words, so he was the most well-informed. Is it true? This news has been spreading for a few years, but it hasn't been held yet. Could it be fake this time? A man who was selling white steamed buns put down his cart. His name was Hu Zi. Although his name sounded scary, he was very timid. Of course it's true. I go to Tonghui Fang often, so how could I not know about it? I heard that the news only spread this morning. If I'm lying to you, I'll treat you to fermented glutinous rice for a month. Zhu Zi pointed in the direction of Tonghui Fang and said solemnly. Hu Zi naturally did not doubt Zhu Zi. Moreover, he said such words, treating him to fermented glutinous rice for a month. Just thinking about it made his heart ache. But when he thought about it, once the basketball game was held, everyone would go to Shao Mountain. Then he would not be able to sell his white steamed buns. His heart ached. That's bad. Then I won't be able to sell my white steamed buns. Zhu Zi rolled his eyes at Hu Zi. Why are you so stupid? Shao Mountain is a mountain. There isn't much food on it. When the time comes, those rich and powerful people will go to the mountain. There won't be enough food to eat. You can take it to the mountain to buy. This time, I'll take fermented glutinous rice to the mountain and make a lot of money. After he finished speaking, Hu Zi felt as if he was enlightened and woke up from a dream. Yes, take the steamed buns to the mountain to sell. Why didn't I think of that? After he finished speaking, Hu Zi hurriedly carried the cart and ran home. He only left behind one sentence. I'm going home to tell my wife. Along the way, Hu Zi dropped a few steamed buns. However, he didn't care about them because he knew that this trip to Mount Shao might be an opportunity for him to make a fortune. How could he care about those steamed buns? Woman, woman, Hu Zi shouted as he ran. He put the load at the door and rushed into the house. He saw a woman with a white cloth hanging from her hand walk out of the house. What's wrong? Hu Zi, hurry up and make white steamed buns. Make all the noodles in the house into steamed buns. If there isn't enough, go out and buy more. Hu Zi hurriedly stepped forward and pulled the woman's hand as he said anxiously. What's wrong? What happened? It's a joyous occasion. The chance to get rich is here. White Deer College is going to hold a basketball tournament. There's not much food there. If we make steamed buns and sell them, we'll be rich. Hearing this, the woman immediately became excited. Really? Are we really going to be rich? Actually, she had only heard about basketball games and only knew that it was something for men to play. However, if her husband said that he was going to be rich, then he was going to be rich. She never doubted her husband's words. Yes, hurry up and make steamed buns. With that, Hu Zi pulled the woman into the house and helped her make steamed buns. The entire Chang'an city began to talk about White Deer College's basketball tournament. In an instant, everyone in the streets and alleys knew about it. I heard that the dean of White Deer College is going to hold a basketball tournament. Did you guys know? This news started to spread this morning. Why did you only hear about it now? This is an unprecedented grand occasion in Chang'an. I heard that many officials from the imperial court are going to participate. They're even practicing basketball at home. It seems like they want to get first place. That goes without saying. If they get first place, they'll get a chance to study at the college for free. This is something that many people want but can't get. Not to mention those officials. Their descendants also need this opportunity. No, I have to go take a look. Forget it. Would White Deer College let a commoner like you in? Then you're wrong. White Deer College's tournament is open to everyone. Anyone can enter. Damn it, why didn't you say so earlier? My steamed buns will be sold somewhere. Yeah, I have to go back and prepare some food for those officials and nobles. When the time comes, I'll make a fortune. Countless people were discussing on the streets of Chang'an city. At this moment, their hearts were filled with anticipation. They were looking forward to climbing Shao Mountain when the basketball tournament started. One had to know that the emperor had chosen them. As long as they climbed Shao Mountain, they would have the imperial aura. Therefore, at this moment, everyone was hoping that this moment would come sooner. At the same time, there were many peddlers who saw this opportunity and wanted to sell their goods on Pyrolite Mountain to make a profit. They had no choice. They were commoners and couldn't participate in the tournament. They could only use this opportunity to take a look at Shao Mountain. Fortunately, Shao Mountain didn't restrict commoners from entering. Chapter 1746. At the same time, Xiaoshan also started to make preparations. As the organizer, White Deer College naturally had to set an example by displaying talents. Therefore, Zhang Feng hadn't been idle during this period of time. Ever since he returned, he started to gather the students of the college. First, he put up a banner at the entrance of the college and invited Chang'an to write the words, "White Deer College is holding a basketball competition." The next day, he invites the officials of the Tang dynasty to come and sightsee. No matter how the basketball competition was held, the brand had to be displayed first. Moreover, Zhang Feng had heard that His Majesty had told all the ministers in the imperial court that all of them would participate. This was giving White Deer College a lot of face. Therefore, the basketball competition this time became the most important thing in the eyes of everyone in White Deer College. They couldn't be careless. Therefore, Zhang Feng gathered Chang'an, Ouyang Xiu, and the other scholars together to discuss what talents to display. Gentlemen, now that the basketball competition has started, as the organizer, what should we display? Zhang Feng looked at everyone and asked. In fact, he already had a plan in mind. He asked the gentlemen so that they wouldn't be dissatisfied in the future. Chang'an stroked his beard. When the time comes, all the officials and commoners will come to White Deer College. Even the royal family and nobles should be prepared. After he finished speaking, he looked at the other three as if asking for their suggestions. Ouyang Xiu nodded. The royal family likes martial arts. Why don't we find a few martial artists to display their skills? Xueji rejected. He glanced at the crowd. Those who come are all high officials and nobles. What if there are people with bad intentions mixed in? As soon as these words were spoken, the place immediately fell silent. Everyone was speechless. Indeed, most of the people who came on the day of the competition were people of high status. If something happened, they couldn't bear the responsibility. Even if they were scholars, they couldn't avoid the blame. Then what do you think we should do? Ouyang Xiu rolled his eyes at Xueji and said unhappily. Xueji frowned and didn't say anything. Zhang Feng glanced at everyone and smiled. This kid has a good idea. If you have a solution, just say it. Don't keep me in suspense. Chang'an glared at Zhang Feng. The other three also looked at Zhang Feng. They all knew that this kid was a crafty little fellow. Who knew what kind of tricks he was hiding? Zhang Feng chuckled as he looked at the crowd. I wonder if all of you still remember the music of King Qin breaking the array? As soon as he finished speaking, everyone was shocked. Especially Chang'an, who had participated in the editing of the lyrics. He was all too familiar with this song and dance. The music of King Qin breaking the array was originally a military song from the beginning of the Tang dynasty. When Li Shimin was still the king of Qin, he led his troops to defeat the rebel Lu Wuzhou and consolidated the newly established regime of the Tang dynasty. Therefore, his soldiers added new lyrics to the old song and sang praises for Li Shimin. The head of state receives the law and the generals punish the traitors. The salty song, Music of Breaking the Array, appreciates the peaceful people. Later, Li Shimin personally choreographed this piece of music into a dance. After being processed by the court dance, it became a huge and magnificent large-scale musical dance. Previously, when Li Shimin received foreign guests, he had used the music of King Qin breaking the array. The large court band of the palace accompanied it. The big drums shook the sky and the sound spread hundreds of miles away. The momentum was vigorous and moving. This song and dance made all the officials excited. When this dance was performed, even the foreign guests couldn't help but dance with joy. Now that this kid mentioned the music of King Qin breaking the array, was he going to perform it in the competition? Although this song and dance was for viewing, it was specially used by the royal family. It was usually enjoyed during banquets and was only arranged during ceremonies. How could this kid use it just because he wanted to? Wasn't he too daring? However, thinking about the relationship between Li Shimin and this brat, the few of them also felt relieved. They could call each other brothers. It didn't matter if they used it for a song and dance. Chang'an's eyes flashed with excitement. Kid, are you going to perform the music of King Qin breaking the array on the court? Previously, when he was composing the lyrics, he saw the palace servants perform the music of King Qin breaking the array. That scene was really grand. Now that he thought about it, he was still very excited. The other three were the same. They had basically seen it before. However, when they thought about that grand scene, their hearts beat faster. It was as if they were 10 years younger. That's right. Zhang Feng nodded and smiled. When the time comes, there will be so many people. I have to give them something to show off so that they won't think that our White Deer College is just a facade. This music of King Qin breaking the array is just right. Aren't you afraid that the royal family will find trouble with you? This is a dance music specially used by the royal family. Although Yu Shernan knew that Li Shimin wouldn't find trouble with Zhang Feng, there were other people. So what? When the time comes, I'll let Lao Li talk to Lord Zhangsun. I don't think the emperor is such a petty person. Moreover, this music of King Qin breaking the array is to praise him. What's there to be unhappy about? Zhang Feng rolled his eyes. Then what are you going to do with this music score? How did you get it? Ouyang Xiu asked from the side. As he spoke, he intentionally or unintentionally gave Zhang Feng a look.